You know, if catching fish is a crime, then I'm a criminal. It blew through the door. I'm sure if you walked in that council house now, 50 years on, you'd still smell those maple peas.
The Thinking Tackle Podcast.
Welcome to the Thinking Tackle Podcast. Now, if you haven't already, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. I'm going to come into this episode with a slightly different slant, and this is a quote from the gaffer himself, Mr. Danny Fairbrass, about today's guest. Now, Andy, Dan said to me, and take this how you will, he wouldn't put Darrell, Peck and Tom Stokes against you and expect them to win. How does that feel when someone like that says that about you?
I'm only from a village.
Yeah.
No, they're top boys.
What does he mean, though?
I don't know. I just like fishing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I fish for myself. Those lads you've just mentioned are second to nobody. My competitive streak is for my next bite, not against anybody.
Yeah.
I love to see them lads on the podcast, get a lot from them. I love doing my own thing. I've really enjoyed fishing with Dan this last year. I just love fishing. It's the fishing.
I mean, that's kind of why we're here. I should give a bit of background, really. You've been fishing over on a syndicate with Dan in Lincolnshire at Baston.
Yes.
He has been so impressed with what he's seen from you, which is kind of, I guess, high praise from someone who sees a lot of good angling going on. What are the sort of things that Dan would have seen if he watches you fish? Like, are you able to give an impression of the way that you fish nowadays?
I'm just like an excited kid, to be honest. I've got a fire burning. I barely make it to the lake. I have to stop and go to the toilet. I'm not excited, whether it's my first or my 200th session. I just love fishing. The thing is with that syndicate, they are all fantastic people. They're all of a level of an angler, and I didn't think places like that existed anymore. I'm in my 50th year of carp fishing, and to find that at this stage is like credit to embryo. It's brilliant. It really is. It's something very, very, very special. And if you've not experienced it, it's special. It really is. I've met some people on there this last year, and they're just different. They really are different. Whether we're all at the same stage of a fishing, if you can call it a career, but no, it's just you know, it's that. I packed up on Friday morning, and a bloke come over from the other lake, and he said, "You had out, mate?" I said, "Yeah, I've had a sympathy bite. I've had one." He went, "Oh." I said, "Are you had out?" "No." "It's in out?" "No." "He enjoyed it?" "Yeah." I said, "That's what it's all about, isn't it?" And there's so many people, if they enjoy it. Just enjoy it. I think if you enjoy it, they run up your rods, don't they? You know, that bite, you know, like many a times, you know, they all laugh because I say, "Oh, I've had a sympathy bite." Why do you get one bite? If you can get one bite, why can't you get two? You know, it's like, why have I caught that? But it's like, well, hang on a minute, you've had the bite. But it's like, it's that drive for that next bite and the next bite, you know, and I think it's a combination of everything. But I would say I'm just as eager to get my next bite as Tom and Darrell.
Yeah.
But I maybe won't get as many as them.
I don't know about that. I mean, what Dan really, I think, has noted with you is your relentless approach to watercraft. Like, he thinks you've got, like, the best vision of any angler he's fished with in terms of seeing the signs. Are you aware of that?
I was brought up fishing with Rod Hutchinson. If you don't learn off him, you might as well call it a day. He, you know, like when I fished with Rod, he was just Rod. Before I knew Rod, he was just a bloke. I never let on what I thought of him. He was a difference. He was clunch. He was moody.
You need to translate that, mate. Clunch.
Lincoln. He was from Grimsby.
Right.
You know, he would tell you how it was without, you know, it was like, and you had to pick the bones out of it sometimes. He would tell you 200 things, and among that 200 things, there'd be one thing that caught you a season's worth of fish, and it was down to you to work it out.
I mean, I want to break this podcast into two halves, really. The first half is going to be the making of you as an angler, your inspirations, where you've been, what you've done. And the second half, we're going to talk a little bit about what you do now as a result of those things. But Rod Hutchinson is hugely significant to you because you knew him, you worked with him, but that's not how it started, Andy, is it? Tell us a little bit about how you first met the imposing figure that is Rod.
He frightened me to death. I think I was an 11-year-old lad. There was a mill. I got brought up in Market Raisin. There was a mill called Hill's Mill, and it had dace and eels in. And I used to tell my mum I was going to Hill's Mill and bike probably 5-6 miles out of town to what's in Rod's book called Pine Trees. It was Field Spits then, and it had tench to die for, the big green red-eyed tench. At the age of 11, without trying to sound clever, I got it together catching these tench. It was grown men there not catching them. And my mum and dad didn't have a lot of money. I was from a council estate. I had what I had, and I just loved fishing. And as I got fishing there, Rod used to, it come apparent in the later days that I'd see him probably every 2 weeks, every other week. And it was because the week I didn't see him, he was on his Redmire syndicate.
The Rota, yeah.
The Rota. And, you'd see him walking across from the gate, and it was like, oh, well, he was massive. He had this sort of leaning forward stand in this trench coat from top to bottom with hair that you could sort of like put over 10 sheep and it'd still cover more. It's like, oh, my God. And it was like, lad, he used to call me, and I used to call him Mister. He wanted Rod Hutchinson. I didn't know what carp was.
Yeah.
I'd read about him in a book, and how long you here for, lad? Oh, till it gets dark, Mister. And that's basically how it was. And it's, why, Mister? Where you where I want to be, lad? And he'd pull me net in, and there'd be a big 4-pound, and he was there. And he started, as a kid, I was a little bit like, and he started taking me serious. He went, how many of these do you catch? Every time I come, I generally catch one, unless the weather's really bad. And it was sort of like it went on from there. And he said, well, I'll tell you what. He said, I'll give you the, and he gave me 2 great big floats. Now, I had nothing in my tackle box. I had enough just to get me through that next session, and me half tin of corn or bread flake. And then he'd come again 2 weeks or a week later, and he'd give me 2 coffin lids to move. Now, I was never the brainiest lad, but I had a lot of common sense, so I started putting 2 and 2 together. And I said, what are you fishing for, them big purpley things? He said, yeah, carp, because, go. And it was like, oh, right. And he says, you're always where I want to be. Well, obviously, the tench swims were good for the carp as well. So I made it my interest to get up trees and start watching them, because I was realising, well, obviously these things do get caught. And he would never tell you a lot, because he come at a time where he just wanted to get set up, because time was the essence. He was living the light. And so I started watching. I started purposely putting myself in the way all the time, whether I really wanted to fish there or not. And he'd be, oh, lads, you where I want to be again. And he sort of almost opened my tackle box, looking at him. And sometimes he'd give me something. Other times, because 1972, you couldn't buy coffin leads for love nor money.
Right.
An 1.5 ounce coffin lead was like, wow. And he had them, I think he was getting them made at the time. And that's basically how I met him. And he, like 72, 73, 74, I was tench fishing, and I was fishing the pit at Market Raisin and what was then called Pine Trees. And I just absolutely pestered the life out of him with questions. And he had this, I'd never seen a bivvy before. He had this big lorry sheet made into a bivvy that nearly collapsed his brolly. And it was just like, when he came with his mate, who I don't know who that was really, because I didn't see him that much, but when he came with his mate, he basically didn't want anything to do with me.
Okay.
When I was, because if he come with his mate, we were there for a week, and they sort of like, wherever they fished, They'd wait till everyone went and then put the baits. So when he came on his own was my time with him. And I don't, like even Brian and that got to know Rod really well, I don't think they realised my early days with Rod and how he used to point me out. And then I started getting his hand-me-downs. He gave me a 36-inch landing net. Well, you couldn't get them. They were made from like bent metal with a bolt through, and the old television aerials, the big ones, and a salmon net on it. And it was like, wow. And, I had 2 ledger rods that I painted green. I mimicked him. I idolised the bloke without letting him know. It was like, and I think I went through really right until his latter days. I let him know that, he used to ring me up and say, oh, come, if Arsenal were playing, he was an Arsenal fan too, and come round and watch the football. And it was like, I don't really want to watch Arsenal, being a Chelsea fan. But I'd watch the odd match with him and that, and I'd just sit there. And I mean, I'm jumping forward a little bit now, but what Rod never knew was amazing. He used to, like, we did Luton, Wembley Conference Centre, all the big shows in the 80s. And he thought he was gifted at picking the right pitch. He said, oh, look, Andy, he said, we've got the right pitch again. Look at everyone round us. He had no idea there was round there for him. And he never once knew, and it was like, wow, he don't know. I sometimes wonder what he'd think to all this. I know he, when he passed, was at his funeral, and it's moved on so much, even from them 3-4 years. And it's, you just think. I know he did some small
films
YouTube
and stuff,
films and that, but he always shied away from it. He wasn't a confident person. He would rather let somebody else, like in the slideshows when we went with him, and he'd rather somebody else spoke. And he just commented. He was, he wasn't there. But as an angler, wow.
Yeah, I mean, just for context, you've washed up as a kid fishing next to the guy that was, albeit not then, but about to become the biggest name in carp fishing in a very new industry, if you like. And probably it's tough to think of too many people that have been more influential on where we are today than Rod was from even that far back.
Yeah, well, he put the first 12-foot rod on the market, didn't he? I mean,
you could go on, couldn't you? With
it's just on and on and on, and he, he was very proud about that.
Yeah,
that he did mention that on more than 3 or 4 occasions. But it was a big step. It was that that foot of fiberglass up the 11 foot of carbon, or I think it was 10 foot of carbon actually, and the but yeah, it was. But he never. He'd rather sit back, like. You get the pioneers of Casein and the people that all went there, and he even took a back seat of that, and he was there, with really, I think it's Phil Harper he went, was it Phil?
He definitely went, because I've recently interviewed him, but he went with Jim Hepper for sure.
Jim, that's it, yeah. Jim Hepper, yeah, he went with Jim, and I think that was his very early trips, and he caught some colossal fish there, and then he just, again, he stepped back from it, and he was always there, he was always catching. He never blanked on blooming Savvy.
No, I mean, can you distill for us, Andy, what the things were that you learnt in those early days from that privileged access to the guy that was at the certainly the brains of carp fishing at that time?
Oh mate, it's you could write books and books and books.
What were the main things? What were the major things that you think you owe him in terms of the way you now fish? Right.
Watercraft.
And how did he tell you about that? How did he explain that?
Things that you just look at a lake and he'd see things, and he would go. There was a story. It was at a lake. I'll never forget it. He just got in his hands some bait and he was flicking them in like that. And he put his hand out and was looking, and 2 carp come along, and they ate. I think he put 6 half-boilies in, and they ate 2 of them, turned round and went, and I sat there like that, and he went, come on, and I went, well, I might come back. He said, what you learnt from that? Well, also, he said, should have only put 2 in and not 6. And I just looked at him, and it was so obvious, you're thinking, well, yeah, but how are you to know that?
Yeah.
And then he says, little is better, isn't it? You know, he says, big in best all the time, little is, and and then he'd say something else, and then you think at night, what did he say? And you go back to it, but he'd tell you in a way you don't take any interest in this. If you do, good on you. But like I think I said to you earlier, he'd tell you 1,000 things, and there'd be half a dozen things in that, it would catch you a lifetime's worth of fish. He would look at a water and he taught me, if you can learn which way the carp come in, i.e. if you pick a bait, if you learn the way they come in, that's all right. If you learn what to do when they're in there, it's beneficial. If you learn how to come out of it as well, he said you're onto something, because he says you've got 3 attempts at them. And he says, if they're knocking that weed and knocking those oxygen bubbles off the weed, that's not carp bubbling. He said that's the way they're moving, which is the way you want to be setting your stalls up at. And it was so obvious when he told you. Yeah, you wouldn't go there before he told you. It was like, well, they're moving all that. They're not. They're not sometimes. They go into a bay, they want to be where they want to be, and they move out at light, sun, dipping down, whatever. And, you know, basically, when you see something, what you think's bubbling, it's basically too late, because they've knocked that weed, they've knocked the oxygen bubbles off it, and they've gone. Yet when he points out how they're knocking them off on the way in, letting you know where they are, there's none coming up, look. You can only do this on a reasonably slack day with wind, and they're not moving, they're still there. So bait this side of them, give them their luxury where they want to be, but set your stalls up on the way out, because we now know to come that way out. Well, it's a game changer.
Really?
It's an absolute game changer. I think Dan was stood with me when this, and I was about to cast out, and I stopped my cast. He went, "What's up?" I said, "There's a carp there."
Right.
And he went, "How do you know?" I said, "Look at the bubbles. It's knocking the kelp." Hey? He said, "I've got glasses on and can't see." I said, look, it's moving out, look, they're going that way." And he went, and it, you know, and I chucked out.
Yeah.
And he'd come round, because I got one stuck in the weed, and I got it out as he come round. He photographed it for me, and he was stood with me the day before. I got fish all over me, and I'd bite. And he went, "Why aren't you getting any bites?" I said, "You're not feeding." I said, "I'm on them. Can't do any more. I'm on them. The traps are set. It's perfect. It's not even worth winding in when everyone else does and chucking out. It's perfect." I said, "They're all over me." I said, "But when they switch on, I expect to get a few." From 2 in the afternoon till 8 at night, I had 6 up to 42. And he come round and he went, "How did you know that?" I said, "Because they had to feed."
Yeah.
It was all down there before they got there. I didn't put it in on top of them. I could see the oxygen bubbles coming off the kelp. They were comfortable. My lines were bowstring tight, so they knew the lines were there. I weren't frightening them with a semi-slack, and they were bumping into it and spooking. Let them know your lines are there right to your bait. Don't feed over your line. Feed beyond it. Just, you know, you can't do any more. It's down. There comes a point where it's down to the fish, and you've got to let them eat when they want to. But it's got to be right for them, and that's, you know, like, you turn one bite into 6 by having your baits in the right place and getting them out mega quick again, because it's a window. You know, everybody goes on about short winter windows. A feeding window only lasts so long. Like if you're in one swim, like a lot of people raise their eyebrows, you get 4, 5, 6 bites out of a swim and you move the next morning while you're still photographing fish. And it's like, so somebody jumps in. If you're on a 20-acre lake and it's got 90, 100 fish in it, and you've had 6 fish out of one swim, they ain't going to be there any longer. You know, there's too much water for them, and you've caught a lot of fish from that spot. So you move down because you realise your rods are going sort of going that way. Okay. So you move down to the next swim, fish that way, and it's just what I've learnt from Rod. That is, you know, I can remember fishing with Rod on the A1 pits in the mid-80s, and early 80s.
We have got a shot, Tobes, actually of A1, I think, just to show what it was like. I mean, it's bare. Yeah,
very. It was in those days. It's not now.
No.
I mean, there's 2 lads run those lakes. Have done Gamo and Pete have done a hell of a job. It's grown up. It's lovely, and Yeah, that was 86.
I like the setup, by the way.
Yeah.
Optonics, snag bars, which kind of feels like it would have been quite cutting edge at that. I don't know. In fact, I wasn't aware that they existed in '86.
Yeah. They, Lockie made me them.
Really?
Yeah. It was. I think he gave the first ones to Catchem products, and I was fortunate enough to get a set.
Well, we're going to come on to the Catchman thing. Sorry, I interrupted you to get this picture up, but you were with Rod on there, and we're going to talk a little bit about the. I mean, these are big windswept pits.
Yeah. It was when the carp hit you on them, you caught a lot of fish. But I think that one's 60 acre, that lake, and
is that the biggest one?
yeah, that's pit 6. I just used to. I don't think all the others was there then. I was saying to my mate from Newcastle, Geordie Dave, who fishes there a lot, I can't remember the other pits when I used to fish. I just don't think, no one seems to know whether there's there or not. I can't remember if there was there. Because sometimes we used to walk from the bridge and walk down the Trent that way, but, obviously they're all in a row. That's 6 nearest to the Trent, and that's the Boulders Corner. It used to flood there, and when it flooded, it was brilliant place to be.
What kind of fishing would you be doing there? Like, if you could, you remember what baiting sort of?
That'd be long range fishing. I'd be a good 40 yard out. That'd be me at my maximum. I
mean, the rods look like they could, they're ultra cult, full duplon.
13 foot.
Were they?
Armor-lights, 3 pounds.
Okay. Heavy rods.
Yeah,
so
they
heavy.
were.
Yeah.
That's what got me the full 40 yards. That did.
How are you getting your bait out though? Are your freebies?
Throwing stick.
Okay, so boilies, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Rod's influence. Do you think that you've been channeling that your whole life? You did mention to me actually on the phone the other day that sometimes you do still consider what Rod might do in a certain situation.
When I'm struggling, I'll be over my rods, and yeah, I'm a big believer in we all talk to ourselves, and we all have, and I just say, come on, what would you do? Give us a clue. I've had one show over me, what's happening here? And then it's tough because as I got to know Rod more and more, he opened up as he got older. And that's when he let a lot go then. And if he told me what he told me then in the earlier days, I'd have been a right nuisance to him. But I am honoured to say that I have fished with Rod when Rod was, mid 70s, late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s.
Peak of his powers. He's catching fish from Redmire, which was the top of the tree then, wasn't it? How soon did you get a sense that this guy was something a bit different? When you were a kid, I mean.
I think when you're a kid, you don't take no notice of anything, do you? And I'm not going to pretend that I knew he was God of carp angling when I never really respected him for what he was. He was just another angler that was always wanting me to move out my swim. And then as Rod sort of like probably 5 years on when, Brian got to know him really well and that, I always stepped back and made out I didn't know him. And I think he thought more of that.
Okay.
I didn't want to be in the clique, the crew, the parties or anything like that. But I think respect was like in the early mid-80s when he asked me to work at Catchem. It turned a few heads. Why did I say? Because I was there from a tiny kid and he asked me to do the shows and I used to help Rod and Brian do the shows. Richie used to help us as well, Richie MacDonald. And I think that was him sort of like, I can remember you as a kid, you come and help. And when I went with him and I caught, I'd move, sometimes I'd move 3 times in a night, and there was no mobile phone tonight. Where are you? And it was like, really quiet. And I'm here, and then his rod would go and you think, I'm here that quiet. And he's shouting to me and his rod's gone, and it's like, but you could never ever sort of like get annoyed with Rod catching. I always caught in the sessions I went with him, always. Never really wanted to catch more than him.
No.
I think...
Perhaps you slipped a few back without him knowing.
No, he was good, mate. Yeah, honest.
Really? Oh. Because he obviously...
I'm talking about the days when he was good.
At his peak, with the particle stuff. I mean... Let's talk a little bit about bait. We're going to talk a little bit more about bait later, but I know that fermented particles is something that probably Rod introduced you to, but it's something that you still use, I think.
Yeah, where I can. I mean, pigeon conditioner and the number one maple piece fermented out for months and months and months in proper fermenting buckets. What I mean by that is, a lot of the lads, bless them, when they ask me fermented particles, they put them in a plastic bucket.
Which is what I'd do, I think.
They can't move. The bucket can't move.
Right.
It'll release air and it'll smell sicky and go off. If it smells sicky, it's not fermented.
Okay.
In the 70s, I'll never forget me dad, bless him. You're too young, but there used to be a homebrew thing called Tom Caxton's homebrew.
Okay.
And my dad, I'll never forget, he got them in 24 bottles. He'd had them in this, you got the bottles, a great big oval-shaped fermenting bucket and all the gizmos to go with it. And what happened is he put too much sugar in and they all blew up one night. So my mum banned him. That was it. So I got this fermenting bucket, and I can remember Rod saying, the bucket's got to move, he said. And he told me all about, put me in your mum's airing cupboard. I thought, this is dangerous. So I learned that you need a good 6 inch of breathe.
Yeah.
The water needs to cover by 1 inch, and you just put them in there. Forget about them for a while, and then you've got to watch it because they're fermenting all the time.
By move, what do you mean by it's got to be able to move?
Move around, just like beer ferments.
So circulate sort of thing. How does that happen?
Heat.
Right.
Yeah, from the airing cupboard.
Okay.
When you get it right, you leave them in as long as you dare. Obviously, your bucket starts going round. It's blowing out.
Yeah.
But it mustn't. You cannot let any air in at all.
Okay.
And the longer you can leave them, and when you think, I don't leave that anymore.
It's like roulette.
Yeah. You put it down. Obviously, your bucket's rocking about, but when that all starts de-shaping everything, you take that top off. If you've got a trowel, you could cut it out like an house brick.
Okay.
And they go really purple.
Mm-hmm.
We only had catapults to get the bait out. Can you imagine what you look like when you put the difference? Obviously, you couldn't fish with fermented particle all the time, maple piece, because it took so long to get to that stage. But certain times of the year, the water at its warmest, sort of like post-spawning till you started losing a few degrees, they just ripped it a new backside. Yeah. They really did. They were banging bait.
I mean, was it Rod that put you onto that? And if it was, how did he explain to you that it made a difference?
I think, if I'm honest, his wording I can't remember, but he said all he kept banging on about was your bucket's got to move. That's the most important, because I know why. I did have one blow off.
In your mum's airing cupboard? Seriously?
Oh, it's like, that was it. So I built a polythene greenhouse, like 4 foot square, and I fermented them in summer in that. I did actually, my mum was quite hard on me, but I felt so sorry. It blew through the door. Oh, it's like nothing on this earth. The smell in the house for months after. And my dad was really pleased because it took the bottles blowing up off him. It was like, no, she wouldn't speak to me. It was like I got my tea chucked at me. It was like, I was only, would have been? I'd have been 14, 15 by that time. It ruined all the clothes, all the bedding, it was like, and we didn't have a lot of money. And I gave her my first I didn't. My first wage when I started working, I was on £25 a week with my national insurance off. You didn't pay tax for nearly the first year because you weren't earning enough. And I paid for my first pine trees full ticket for the year, which was £25, and I give her my next 2 pay packets through guilt.
Yeah.
And I still don't think it made up for it. It was a mess. I'm sure if you walked in that council house now, 50 years on, you'd still smell those maple peas. Mate, they were rancid.
I mean, Rod was a massive maple pea advocate, wasn't he?
And I think Pete Regan mentioned it in his vlog. I was on Waveney with Rod in the early days, and the rig he had on, it was like, there was Lenny Middleton, Dick Whale, Lemborn. I don't know if Pete was there he must have been there one of the times. And he had a rig that long, and his coffin lid was part of it.
So that's for those listening, that's a very short rig.
In the 70s.
Yeah.
And everything was in the carp's mouth, the lead and everything. Okay. And it was sort of like, I mean, he'd been at Kent, I think he'd been to Johnson's, and he came back and fished G Lake, and he had 3 fish. No one else had a bite. And Lenny Middleton, he just used to shake his head at him. You know, it was like, because he was so absolute heavy-handed with everything.
Okay.
He'd fish the margins and fall in.
I think you said actually that Rod was the clumsiest guy ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He always used to say he had a perforated eardrum. Oh, crikey. It was like, no, Rod, you're just clumsy.
Yeah.
You know, you just, but it wouldn't have been Rod without him being clumsy. You know, it was.
I mean, let's talk. I tell you what, Topes, chuck up a couple of the pine trees fish before we leave this, because I do want to talk Waveney next. Because obviously, Waveney's the first time you're going to be on what was a nationally significant venue with these big.
With fishing.
Yeah. So,
I mean,
this is your first common, £13.76. So how old would you have been there? Like mid-teens sort of thing. So
yeah,
similar.
15, 16.
Yeah. It's a lovely fish. Is that the brolly behind? Is that one of Rod's that cast-offs, or would that be yours?
I can't.
Just see it
no, I
poking
don't
out
think
like.
Rod give me a brolly. He'd just give me he used to give me the odd brolly cover that wouldn't.
Yeah.
You know, your brolly wouldn't stand it. It claps it, and that's why I give it away. Like,
I remember the pictures I've seen of pine trees with these crazy little islands and the sort of pallets running out. It looked like a really cool lake.
Yeah, but that was 90s. I'm talking 70s. This was like iconic. I mean, there's rumour Walker fished it, but I don't think he did. Morris Ingham did. Morris Ingham and them lads did. But
some more shots, Topes. I think there's a couple more. So that was your first common, but also some of the mirrors look. I mean, tell us about the mirrors.
Well, apparently the mirrors come in the same way that the Redmire fish came in. The same sort of. I think it was the second or third stocking of Redmire fish.
Of Leany fish.
Yeah, came in. You know, that's.
Love the pose, by the way.
Yeah, that was. I just loved them days. They were.
So you think these are potentially like Galician mirrors, they're potentially Leany mirrors?
You see, the thing is, in those days, Rich, you never saw another carp angler.
Yeah.
If I didn't see Rod, I never saw another carp angler. It was.
Yeah, I think the other one, Topes, the last one, was a really impressive fish to me. That's at 19. I mean, that's a 20, mate. Sorry, I shouldn't gloss over that. That's a huge carp, isn't it, really?
Oh, crikey, yeah.
And this one, a 19. Yeah, either of those, mate, really. I mean, that's a sensational fish. Looks a little bit like one of the Redmire 30s from that era.
Yeah, you can see they've got the same Redmire sort of strain, can't you?
Did Rod know where they came from, those fish?
Yeah, it's in his book. I think it's in one of his books where they came from, like, but... I mean, I didn't understand all that at that time. I was just...
No, nobody did, though, did they?
No.
And you've got... That's the net, is it, underneath it?
Yeah.
That he gave you?
Yeah.
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 And one of the pine trees in the background, presumably.
Yeah. Oh, it was... Honest, you know, like... I've enjoyed life so much, being around, playing... You know, like... You can't take those memories away from anyone, can you? And it was brilliant. It really, really was. And to think that... You saw somebody like Rod. I mean, don't get me wrong. Brian that then fished with Rod.
Hankins, yeah.
Brian Hankins, Lionel, there's a lot will know him. You know, like, he gave us a lot of information because obviously I stepped back and he was Rod's fishing pal and we just fished the same 2 lakes together. And they were brilliant days, they were brilliant.
I mean, but I think, like I just mentioned, £19.15 and the previous shot was a £20.
They were massive fish.
In 1976
they were
and 78.
50s of today, 56. They were massive.
Yeah.
You know, like we'd go all year for 2 bites. There was, you know, in the Britpert Market Raisin, I think there was 9 fish.
Well, we're going to talk about those in a second. We've got a couple of pictures of very impressive carp. But you've caught lots of big English carp, up to nearly £60.
Yeah.
Multiple 50-pounders. Where do those fish rank in terms of like the best fish you've caught?
Those fish mean more to me early fish, because you didn't know. It was like the blind leading the blind. You had to learn on your feet. It was like I'd cycle up with all my gear. There'd be an occurrence every time because we had, you know, like your bed chairs that you put together first, and then you got the sun loungers like everybody of that era did, and they were strapped to your back with a rucksack on, with your rods over your shoulder and everything else tied to your bike, and it was an ordeal just getting up there. You know, it's all on a bike that no one had passed the test, and it made it all the more, you know, to catch. You'd go up there 15 times, not see a fish. You know, if it's wet, you couldn't see them, then you'd find them. And then, you know, Rod would say pre-baiting, and I didn't know what he meant, you know, what, you know. And then when he sort of like, I saw what he was doing, so I just copied what he did. And this was with tears. I was piling, I mean, I would think nothing of putting 25 kilo of maple peas in on a Friday night.
What, to fish over?
To fish over.
Wow.
And we used the big Hessian sacks.
Yeah.
You know, there was no carp gear. And in the morning, it was like, you know, like when you're icing a cake and it squeezes down as you're putting it out. That's how much it had passed through it of all these maple pea skins. And it was, you know, when you think back, it was like, wow. You know, it's such a shame that today's carp angler can't register on that because...
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It makes me wonder whether you would ever trust using like stuff like prepared particle. You know, when you use your particle now, is it very much fastidiously done in the same way that you've always done it?
I think particle that you buy to prepare yourself, take emp's rubbish. It's rubbish nowadays. It's
tiny, doesn't split occasionally, you know.
The hemp we used to buy then, you know, like if you want to mimic yesteryear's hemp, you've got to buy buckwheat.
Right. Is it as good?
It's good, but it's not as good. But hemp isn't as good. But, you know, it's like, it's easy to say that. Nothing nowadays is good, is it? Nothing lasts 5 minutes. You know, the only thing that's moved on is fishing gear. And, you know, like when you bring a rod out, like a Korda green rod, and it outfishes everything, you know, that tells you something about that. You know, fishing gear's come on so much, it's untrue, isn't it? Whereas anything, i.e. like seeds and things like that, I think it must be getting harder for the people that
it can only be like that they're finding it more tricky to get, or we're not ending up with the A-class stuff for some reason.
Yeah, it's easy to say this hemp's crap, but you don't know what they've come through to get that hemp. So you like that, you know, it's easy to knock somebody.
I feel like I've vaguely heard that, like your Spanish stuff, they've had some really tricky like growing conditions in recent times. I don't know how true that is.
I don't get into that. I just know
a lot of stuff against Chinese hemp now as well. So
it's, you know, it is what it is. You just go along with it, don't you?
Yeah.
But, you know, I think sometimes the prepared hemp, you know, like I can remember even like the golden rule with hemp is don't put anything in with it and then it'll split. You know, like the boys at Chuck
I've made that mistake.
It won't. And you just now you just boil it and boil it and boil it and boil it, and it won't split sometimes. And then you'll get another batch that splits out, and it's rubbish. But
can I read into that you don't do the whole fermentation thing now? Is it?
No, because I don't know where I can take. I don't break rules.
Yeah.
Whatever anyone says, you know, like I abide by rules because I think I'm very fortunate to be on a lake. So the lakes I fish don't allow particles, so I would never dream of taking it.
Yeah.
You know, like anyone can ask me to wind any of my rods in at any one time, and they'll find whatever coloured boilie I fancy on that day. Where you know, Roger, I don't know if this is one of these curveballs Rod's given me, but he, you know, in the latter days, he got me changing me bait colours as the sun dipped down and things like that. And I thought, hang on a minute here, Rod, are you winding me up here or what? But he told me it with a straight face, but he could do that. You know, he maybe had a chuckle when he had left, but
well, it's like the one where you told us about with the you told me about on the phone, where he made you move your rod 3 foot to the left.
I told Lee about that this morning. Oh, that was like. He says, "Are you coming to the calf?"
This is at Savo. We've jumped forward a bit, but for the purposes of telling this little story.
When he took me for a guest session, and he says that middle line needs to be further that way, and I went, "But I've leaded it. It's all the same. The bottom's the same. It's really good bottom. It needs to be 2 foot further that way." And he off he trundles. Are you coming right? No, I'm not. No, they're coming down, mate. There's a big southerly picking up. They're coming down. See your head, he set it in motion, hasn't he? So you wind in. I'm not going to tell him I've wound in. I'm not going to chuck it out, you get it where, and I'm sort of not looking where it's landed. I know the distance right and everything. I'm looking to see if that line's 2 feet further that way or not. That's how it's got me. Which rod goes when they hit me? The one that I've moved. He comes up. I had one. Yeah. Did you move it 2 foot? Yeah. And it's like, and I said, but the bottom's the same. Surely it would have gone where? There's a dinner table and a dinner plate. And it's like, you know, some of the things you used to say, dinner table and dinner. And then you realise, don't you, well, they pick up there. And you learn then, don't you? Know, like, it's like when people are snag fishing and they're chucking 2 rod lengths before the snag is. You've got to be a bit nearer the snag, mate. Now they're jumping there. Well, you had to come out the snag to jump. They can't jump in the snag, can they? Oh, yeah. You know, and they go in 2 rod lengths and get a bite.
Is the whole dinner plate thing something you've taken through your fishing?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
And how do you find them then?
Fish show you them.
Right.
He said to me, I got into it. I punished him. I said, mate, so how are we finding them? Because obviously I ain't got the strength of eyes you have where I can look on. He says, let me show you where it is. He said, if you've had a bit of a dull session and that fish shows there, and then you see it there again on another session, obviously you're in the same, and it's telling you that's where you want. And I found this on a lake I fished, the Foundry in Lincoln. They showed you where they fed. They jumped all over, but fish jumped in a certain spot regularly, you know, at certain times of the day. And it was like, yeah, and it worked. It was the difference between a bite and half a dozen.
Does that mean having that knowledge that you therefore cannot not look at the water when you're fishing?
I need tying up. I've got to be stood out. I mean, I get caught. I mean, at the syndicate I'm on now, they've got that many names for me, like the Heron, and then because I'm clowning about with bait all the time, the Chemist, you know, and it goes on and on and on. I have to be facing the water. One show. This last session, it's not done a fish. It's fishing crap. One up and down show. Rod wound straight on. It went at midnight. The only fish of the session.
First fish of the year.
First, you know, I don't know if it's the first fish of the year or not because I'm disinterested in what other people catch on other rotors, but I don't think there's been many out. But what I mean is, if I hadn't have seen that, if I hadn't have been stood outside, I just love standing outside. You know, it's like in winter, up and down, badoosh, 20 to 1 in the morning. Yeah, you wouldn't have heard that badoosh in daylight hours. You know, you wouldn't have heard that badoosh convenient evening hours. You've got to put yourself out, but you've also got to like doing it. I love doing it. I love it. You know, like I'll get to the syndicate water hours before the draw, and they'll all come, where are they, mate? And I'll tell them exactly where I've seen them. No secrets. Them days are gone. The secret days were like, we've been through them, enjoyed them. Was it necessary? It was all secret, squirrels, you know, hiding things and what have you. That's how it was. Now it's like, just share it. If I can't catch a fish, let's hope someone else can catch a fish. And, you know, every dog has his day and it goes round, doesn't it? And I think that attitude on a lake gives you and Baston's like that. It's lovely. It's really, really nice.
I want to save a bit of the Baston stuff because, you know, that's very much where you've been recently. But we mentioned Waveney. It strikes me that this is, you know, A, nowhere near Lincolnshire where you're from, and B, even at that time when you were young, incredibly famous and a hotbed for innovation, some of the biggest names in fishing going there. What was it like to visit that complex?
It's my favourite place ever. It was like heart nearly jumped out of me when I used to go down that. Whoever took me as a kid and dropped me off, if it was Rod, you just hoped he remembered he'd take you and he'd pick you up on the way back from Kent.
Did it ever happen that he didn't remember?
No, because I think he always wanted to fish G Lake on the way back or D Lake, else he'd have forgot me, you know. But my mates took me. Rod didn't take me that many times, but my mates took me that could drive. But it was iconic. It was brilliant. It was
Describe it for people who've never been. Like, what are we talking about? It's a holiday camp, even back then, is it?
Yeah, it didn't have many vans on it then. There was D&E, which were joined up by the little cut through.
Yeah.
There was C Lake, G Lake, and we could fish F Lake. They all had targets in, but they all had lots of fishing. I mean, the lakes where I came from had 4 or 5 fishing, 10, 5 acre. These lakes were 5, 6 acre with 100 fishing, and it was easy as a 14-year-old kid.
It's like the promised land for you then, basically. You've come down, you already honed your skills, and now all of a sudden you can sort of detonate on these.
Imagine a 14, 15-year-old lad getting dropped off at Waveney. Lenny Middleton, Dick Wheel, Len Bunn, and Pete Regan was fishing there. It was like, and they were developing black magic, and I was around.
Where are we with the hair rig as well at this point?
The hair rig was a long time away. It was probably still 3 years away.
Okay. Do you think Lenny was working on that at that time when you were there, or?
He was a damn good angler. He easy could have been.
Yeah.
He was. I mean, I can remember asking him all about this black magic, because I mean, and so I replicated a boilie, Weetabix, mashed up bacon grill. Can you remember the bacon grill?
Yeah, you still get it, I think.
Yeah, and a binder. I used flour and boiled it, and I put.
Bet your mum was buzzing.
Oh, I was in trouble all the time. And the old amyl acetate.
Yeah.
It was.
What made you use that then? Because that's still quite current, isn't it?
Because there was no flavours or anything.
Uh-huh.
I had some cochineal food colouring, because I used
red,
to,
isn't it?
Yeah, I used to dye my hair because I was a punk in them days. So I used to, and I tried, but it wouldn't go through the luncheon meat or anything, and you couldn't, get what you. So I just left it natural. And to be honest, it probably stands here that how it was all a ruffled surface with bits of luncheon meat stuck out, but the egg binded it all in.
Yeah.
And I really caught on it. To be quite honest, I don't think it needed the amyl acetate in it. They just, but. And then I stopped using boilies. When I didn't fish Waveney, I didn't use boilies. It was silly, really. It's like, if I brought it back to my waters, would you known what they were? Probably not. I probably wouldn't have caught. But the maple peas and the pigeon conditioner was so good anyway. And we had, like places where we could really get the animal feeds and everything. Even garlic powders and things like that for the horses that they put. We was on that really, really early, and it's a phenomenal thing, garlic like.
Why was this black magic like piquing Rod's interest as well? Because obviously, he's a little way off launching his own stuff at this stage.
Rod was working with Fred Wilton. It was Rod and Fred Wilton.
Because he was now in Kent fishing Johnson's. He'd met Fred, right?
Yeah, and I think they were looking at the aminos and enzymes and all that, and learning that you couldn't boil it because it killed it, and it wasn't just a tabletop. It was worked out. But I'm not even going to pretend I understood all that.
No, I mean, for a youngster, like, were you aware that it was going on?
I was given some black magic.
Yeah. And
I used it as a paste, and I took it off because I thought it was rubbish. Because I was catching on maple peas, I was catching on broad beans. Yeah, the amazing thing was, we used to look for anything in a tin that had a lesser salt content in the water. Now what do we do?
The opposite, right?
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But, it's just what you was brought up to think in those days. But no, it's a matter. I used to sometimes fish, when I used a pigeon conditioner, I used to fish broad beans over the top. And I'm sure them lads that way on had never used it like us northerner lads used it. And our Rod brought us up to use it. And it was an edge.
Yeah. Which lake did you fish first on that famous complex, and how were you received by the likes of Lenny and Pete and the others? I
don't think I was taken serious until I started, like they'd all be on the front of Waveney and they might have had one fish between them or something, and I'd have 3 or 4 fish in the corner. And it was like, Pete took notice. He says, Neil, are you catching them on? And I showed him. And obviously they put 2 and 2 together. It was all out of Rod's stable, and I got took a little bit more serious. But I was only a kid. I was only a young lad.
Yeah.
And then I progressed on to. I caught some of the big ones out of D. I never saw the point in fishing because they were same lake, and I don't think they fed as well. Even as a young lad, the feeding areas was better in D.
So, and did you catch big scale, which was obviously the?
Yeah, I did like that. I went back in the 80s and caught that
when it was big.
Yeah, I caught the leather.
Let's get the leather. We've got. In fact, you made the papers, didn't you? The local papers. Go on, let's go have a look at these Waveney shots. In fact, maybe they're in the early shots, Tobes. The paper, newspaper cuttings, of Andy with the leather. The very famous. Went on to be a very famous carp.
Yeah.
Caught by, like you said,
Maddox, Maley,
Tim Paisley.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that one. That's
the one with the threes. And the,
any of those, mate. That's just. So that's some rods, actually, isn't it?
No, that's Waveney. That's the leather.
Oh, it's the leather at the top.
Yeah, that's a 24 and a 21.
Yeah.
That was in 77, 78 season. 78. Yeah, 78. I was a mod there. I got a Lambretta, and I got a black eye.
You seem to. There seems to be a theme. The black eyes. You pointed a few out as we were going through the. Is this the football thing?
Yeah.
Right. Following Chelsea.
Just wasn't very good at fighting.
There's actually, Tobes, I think is this from the. Maybe have a look in the Waveney one. That's from the Rods catalogue thing. Keep going down, Tobe. Yeah. Okay. There you go. No, back up. And that's the leather, right? So really distinctive tail.
Yeah.
And this, I think, arguably is before it was really, really famous, isn't it?
Oh yeah. That was early doors. That one.
Yeah. I mean, these were, I think, Dutch fish. Is that right?
Yeah. I had the big ones in the lake. I don't think big scale was in then. The Italian.
Yeah.
And the silverfish. They were the next two big ones.
And how did you catch them? What were you actually doing? You know, you're using the particle, you've said that. And often from the, you weren't fishing famous swims like the Oak or whatever. You were casting across.
Rod took me, and the road in between D and C, there's a little swim at the bottom on the side of D. He said, fish up to the margin there. Over a week I put not quite 50 kilo of maple peas in.
Okay.
I had a 25 as well. I'd had Gertie on G before I moved on to D that week. There's a story behind that. Got out the sack. My mate changed sacks because he didn't think it was big enough. And Regan come round to photograph it, and my mate was well hard. He was Stan. He was my best man, and I was his best man. And there was the two lads from Norwich, Pete Regan, all the cameras set up. And it wasn't in the sack.
Oh my God!
Big gaping hole because of drawstrings. You threaded your rope through and pulled, and it had all because it was as lively as mad. But I caught it again, so it didn't matter. But yeah, it was. He rags me to this day about that. And then he caught the leather. After it jumped out my arms.
Yeah, Pete did.
Yeah.
That was the background to that shot is it's flying over your shoulder at one point.
Yeah, it jumped out. It jumped over my shoulder.
And where was Pete then? Goalkeeping.
It was at the side. Pete looked after me. He won't admit it. He's the big I am. He looked after me.
Yeah.
He checked me morning, dinner time, and before it got dark, he made sure I'd eaten. And I always used to come and fish Waveney when I could do, when I knew Pete would be on shore. He was on shore on Wednesdays, and he was good. He took the mick.
Yeah.
But I think he just saw the passion in a young lad that loved fishing. He was a hell of an angler. I remember his bait boat, and he had.
Even back then, would he have one? He had one in the 70s.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think he had Jim Gimmonson Klooper rods. Can you remember those?
Well,
really?
Yeah.
Oh no,
I wasn't alive, but you'd
still be having a pamper put on, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, not in the 70s, I wasn't. Yeah.
But it was. That was Waveney. It was like, I still YouTube and find the old Waveneys. It's like, and I still get that. It was brilliant.
I mean, driving through the gates, is that what you mean? That sort of like... But you've got a long time to think about it from Lincolnshire down to Norfolk, haven't
I've got
you?
even longer because my car used to overheat every 40 mile.
Yeah.
It was like, you know, like you pulled the choke out and it was like, and you eventually get it going. This is if it was a cold night. And you get 40 mile in and the steam would start coming out. So you pulled up, put a bit, you know, the ultimate thing we all did, you took the top off, got boiling hot water all over you, filled it up, it bubbled it over, it made it all worse. You eventually got there and you just almost run the car in, got out of it as it was still moving and looked where there would be a swim available. And that's what it was. And Bill, the bailiff, anything been out, Bill? And you get the same story off him all the time. But he looked after me, Bill. He never charged me much. And Norman, that owned it, he had relatives in Lincolnshire, Alford. He always made sure I was all right. I'm sure he turned a blind eye to me using maple peas.
Were you not supposed to?
No. But it was, you know, like I say, I don't break rules. In them days, everybody just used particles.
Yeah.
Don't forget, boilies weren't about.
Didn't exist, yeah.
You know, they eventually started stocking the Richworth Tutti Fruities and the honey yakatangs and all that in the freezer, but there was no boilers. They were still being developed and things like that. You had to, you know, like you had to use maple peas.
Do you think, given that you went down and measured yourself effectively against some of the, you know, top boys of the day, did you think you actually, on reflection, you did every bit as well as them?
But they were just misters to me. All right, mister. You know, I'd pass them going for a shower and that'd be it, else I'd never leave me swim. And they'd often come round because they'd see me playing a fish. It's all margin stuff. And I didn't sort of like judge myself against anybody. I was just grateful to be there. And they weren't iconic anglers. They only are when I, you know, as years come on and you look back, they were just people fish. But it was brilliant because I never saw carp anglers. There was myself, you get the odd person start and pack up the same year. And then there was Brian and Rod. I
mean, you've fished with, or at least alongside, Lenny Middleton and certainly with Rod Hutchinson, arguably two of the people who have shaped, you know, the very foundations of where we are today. You know, without the hair rig and without Rod's influences, the carp scene, yes, someone else might have come up with it, but it would have looked potentially very different for a long time.
Yeah, they were just people though, weren't they? You know, I was fortunate. I mean, I can't remember what Lenny said to me. It was just a person that he was so focused on his fishing. He never looked behind hardly. Just, you know, there was two others from the Bungie. They were really nice people. They were just amazed. I was a young kid that was hell bent on carp
Obviously,
fishing.
Dick Wheel, you know, had been at Redmire as well.
Yeah, it's.
When you look at the way you fished then, do you recognise the angler that you are today? Have you actually changed a lot or not at all?
I never thought about it in them days. It was like, it was so good to get a run, you know, and then another run. And I just knew I was going to catch because I'd listen on the BBC weather before I left, because obviously you've got nothing to look at when you're there. And I knew at some point I had to get off G and get on D because the wind was coming in. If you fished, in the article I put in the magazine in '86, if you fished the side swims without the wind, you caught stockies. Lots of them, if you got it right. If you was there before the wind changed and you got 20 kilo of maple peas out all down that bank, well, like that bag of fish I was holding, that, you know, that was I'm not blowing, but that was an incredible catch for 1977, 78. Phenomenal, you know, like, and they just kept coming. You know, I caught the next night and then the wind would go, and I'd move on to sea or something like that, you know. And that was the good thing about Waveney, it was lakes and not the lake, you know, so.
You always had a chance.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Did you, in terms of getting these maple peas out there, presume you're walking around the back and just throwing them out?
Yeah, I could walk down the bank.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was carnage when I was putting them in.
Right.
Oh,
scooping them out or like throwing them out, or how are you?
Just out the bucket.
Yeah.
Like that.
By hand.
When it got dark.
Right.
Yeah. Thinking you was doing it quiet, but
everyone knew.
You'd have woke everyone in Arliston up 2 miles down the road. And then it was all frothy where I'd done it.
Yeah.
It was
How big a patch were you looking to establish? Like what
50-yard bank.
Oh, you'd bait the whole thing?
Yeah.
What was the thinking behind that?
I'd catch them somewhere down that bank.
Okay.
It was...
You didn't think to pin them?
No, it all depends which. If they come down the margin under my feet, I get them on that rod first. If they come down the private bank round the corner, I get them on that rod. I had to get them on one rod. Yeah, it's like, you know, how Rod taught me to fish free on a spot that weren't on a spot was an iconic way of fishing. So it's the pyramid. I think he went on about it a little bit in the Carp Strikes Back. So you're fishing your rods like that. So your furthest rod out's your middle rod, and then you stagger, say 5 rods down, 7 rods down, and you're never cutting those fish off, never.
Okay.
However they hit you, you're not cutting those fish off. And it definitely helped on some waters more than others. It was a...
So in the geography of any swim that you walk into, Andy, is your bait positioning like quite high on your list of things you're thinking about?
The habitat of what's down there, weed
is first,
to
right?
help.
Yeah.
If you put your bait next to weed, not on a clear bottom, on a messy, presentable bottom, you'll catch. They love weed. They love in and out things, up and down things. If the bottom's volcanic, you know, up and down and up and down, and you've got weed, just learn where to run in it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You know, pot luck or learn to swim. You know, pot luck, you'll catch fish. Learn to swim, you'll always catch fish.
Do you give yourself time to learn the swim though? Because it strikes me that if you're not seeing fish, you're moving anyway.
Yeah, you soon know if they're not there. I mean, when they're there and you're not catching them, you can't do any more. You know, if you know to swim, what more can you do? You can't. Sometimes you've got to pay the waiting game, you know, and they will eventually pick up. They can't keep refusing it. No, it's there. They're gonna tip up at some point. Especially with today's bait, you know, we put so much liquid and oils in. But in the early days, margins, loved them. You know, particle you had to anyway because you could only get them so far out of a carp. Waveney just absolutely. It was perfect for my type of fishing.
How are you presenting the maple piece? Because, you know, what have you even got access to then? Are you still on the coffin leads? That kind of effectively an inline lead? Any
lead you could get, what the local shops had in, basically.
Which you probably
believe it or not,
yeah.
Even 2 small leads sometimes. Yeah. You'd put them on really narrow lines so they broke off when you got a bite. Anything to... You did learn quickly that you needed a little bit of weight there. The free line, you know, I was actually in the free lining days. You bleep, bite off. You know, it gone. It was like, you know, and you was that, you didn't realise it's like, and it would happen again. Or in the night you'd wind in and you didn't have a bait or an hook on one rod, and it was like, you know, and then it all become apparent, and there was a big thing in angling times about chew-offs, you know, bite-offs, and you realise that the lead was more important than what you just thought it was for, and it was a massive learning curve. You know, the learning curve in those days was non-stop. It was coming at you at 100 mile an hour, whereas there's a format to carp fishing nowadays. It's just as good carp fishing, you know, enjoyment's there and everything, but in those days you'd take something back every time you went home and try and add to it and everything. If you wanted to, you know, don't get me wrong, some people are just happy, like we were saying, some people are happy camping, some people are happy getting away for a little while because they've got a stressful job. I had to get a next bite and a next bite, and I knew at Waveney I could get a year's bite in a week, and when I went home it'd be hard again. But I took a lot back with me when I went home, and, you know, I was swimming, putting a inner tube over me and putting my bucket in front and swimming the bait out, and I realised I could get it out just the same as off a margin. I had to do it at the hours of darkness, you know, because you weren't allowed to do it. And, you know, and then blow the inner tube up in the dark because you shouldn't have an inner tube. And were you pulling strokes? Were you breaking rules? No, because it didn't say don't swim out with an inner tube. don't take your bait out in a bucket swimming out. He said no swimming, but I was baiting up, so there's fishing and there's swimming, isn't they? But I was just fishing, there was nothing, I think the first book I got was Jim Gibbonson's carp book. Just read it and read it and read it and read it, and I can remember Jim and Rick Gibbonson writing, and you'd look for somebody else other than Rod, because Rod was on your doorstep, and you'd look, and you'd just try and widen everything you knew, and did they tell you something different, but you didn't need anybody else.
I was going to say, you kind of spoilt that, aren't you, really?
Yeah, it was.
I do want to look at some of the brickpit fish before we move on from that period of your life, because they are, I think, amazing.
Well, the brickpits in Market Raisin, a couple of local lads, Rod, Brian and myself, fished it, and I think in those days, it had 12 fish in. It had an iconic split fin, Mickey fin. Its dorsal bone stuck out everywhere it swum. It come out 3 times in 20 years.
What?
3 times in 20 years. It was...
Did any of you catch that one?
Rod caught it, Brian caught it. It beat me up savagely, where it run every bit of line out. I'm embarrassed to say.
Oh, you got spooled?
Got spooled. It was mental.
Right.
And then there was the leather, which
is this
you
one?
Can see.
Sensational carp.
82, 83. I'd still take that today, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Yeah, you could say that. I mean, that's rare, isn't it? I don't know if it's got any scales, but who cares?
It didn't have any.
Not one.
No, it was a true leather.
Yeah, you quite often get those interesting dorsal fins with them like that as well.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about how you caught that one?
I'd been fishing the Lido in the morning, and I'd had a couple of fish, and it was a busy Saturday on the Lido. So the Lido's on the coast at Summercote, so I drove back to Market Raisin where I lived, and I just thought, I'll just call in at the pit. And all the night boys that were doing the weekend had gone home. In those days, you used to go home for an afternoon kip. So I set up in a swim where there wasn't a bivvy or anything. Caught that in 10 minutes.
Why? How?
Boil it up through a size 2.
Did you see these fish then?
I saw the pads dinking.
Yeah.
And I thought, it's either tench or there's a carp in there. And I thought, I'm still chucking boilies in, I've got to run.
So you lowered it among the pads, or
just a little underarm like that?
Yeah.
Pulled it back, put it down, put the wine bottle indicator on the brass rod. I think I got 1, 2, and it melted off. And everyone run around. When you look at carp in them days, everybody, and the dog, the dad, the mother-in-law runs round and stood behind you. And it was a phenomenal fight. It was brilliant. And I just packed up and went home.
How big was that one?
28-14, I think.
Would that have been you'd had
That's the biggest it'd ever been.
Really? You'd had the leather at this point as well, hadn't you? So
yeah.
Had you caught 30s? Or are these pre that?
I think so. I think I'd had... Bloody hell, it's a long time ago.
Yeah, I'll let you off. Doesn't matter. Look at it. Doesn't matter. It's a big carp for Lincolnshire then, isn't it?
It's an iconic. It's a special fish. Yeah. There's some anglers that's now past caught that. It means a lot to everybody, and the fish died and it got buried. I think that's what happened to it. And yeah, what a fish! At the time, you didn't realise what a fantastic fish it was.
No, been very few leathers like that. Can think of only a handful.
But yeah,
when you look back, do you think you're kind of lucky to have caught that at all, given that you've effectively free-lined a side-hooked boilie and got a ripper?
Oh, you're lucky. Yeah, and like all the big fish I've caught, you're lucky, because the small one could have picked the bait up. I've been nearly 150 fish into a lake with 110 fish in it, and I ain't had one of the big ones. And it's like, what? And then you get them all. And it's like, but it's the old saying, innit? Don't fish for a fish, fish for them all, and you'll catch the fish. And just enjoy it along the way. You know, it's the one saying that Rod used to put in all his books, articles, don't forget to smell the flowers along the path.
No, absolutely. I mean, is that something you've taken into your fishing as well?
I just go 100 mile an hour at it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the way I fish. I mean, Rich says to me, Rich Cox, he says, why don't you just slow down and enjoy it as a syndicate and fish it for years? Sorry, mate, it's the way I fish.
Yeah.
It's like tickets go over my shoulder because I you know, I'm 64 this year. I keep thinking it's going to be my last year and you realise
Why would it be? Why should it be? Because you keep fit, don't you?
Yeah, but you know, like if I can't fish at the level I'm fishing, I'll call it the day. I've got to be able to fish at my level, like, you know, it's if I can't move 2 or 3 times, if I can't stay up all night, if I can't cast every 5 minutes when I'm just on singles, I'll call it a day.
Yeah.
Because I've seen some very good anglers age and go backwards, and it's a crying shame because they're phenomenal anglers. And we're all going to do that. You know, if I can't bend down to pick a landing net up, then I shouldn't be carp fishing.
Okay.
You know, and if I can't maintain a carp when it's caught properly, I shouldn't be carp fishing. I hope I've got a few more years yet, but...
You'd be happy turning them over the net, though, wouldn't you? Anyway, there's one thing we haven't spoken about is the fact that, you know, we're lucky to have some of your photographs here, but you don't care about your photos, do you?
No. I have to take pictures and log them, but I don't like doing, because to me a fish in the landing net, unhooked and turned out, isn't a truly caught fish. It doesn't affect that fish the same. So that fish can swim out. Don't knock anybody for photographing all their fish 20 times over. Good on them. Well done for catching them. But we're all different again, aren't we? And I'd much rather look at it and let it go. It's the bite. It's that diddly-dee on the buzzer, isn't it?
Yeah, you said it's all about the bite for you, which is crazy, because you've caught some amazing carp that, you know, that bear looking back at in picture form.
Yeah, but it is the bite. It's like a cash out in a supermarket. Once you've done that and she's cashed that thing out, it's gone from her. And that bite you've just had, once it's in the landing there, it's about your next bite. That's old hat now. You know, I don't know whether that's wrong or right, or is there a wrong or right?
No, I don't think so. I mean, people go fishing for different reasons, don't they?
Yeah.
Do you think that you haven't gone out and out onto water? Well, you did say you'd fished linear, but you haven't gone out and out onto lakes where you could just get 50 bites in a trip, though, have you? My
lad can outfish me 100 times over on waters like that.
Yeah.
He's got it.
You have had some ridiculous hit, though, haven't you? I can't remember, I think you said the other day, like, in terms of sheer numbers.
Was you on then, Lee? When I had that? Yeah, I had 82 fish in 48 hours, biggest 54 and a half. Everybody brought me the bait I was using. My bait, my lad brought some bait, then he got the because he didn't want to fetch me on it. I'd used 40 kilo at this time, and I used a load of somebody else's bait, and I got the ridge monkey there, you know, and then people turn around and say, oh, he only catches it because he's using hormones. I was using everyone's bait.
Yeah.
You know, I was mixing it up for me, and it's like, you know, like, I only caught fish because I fished with Rod Hutchinson. I only caught loads of fish because I got given free bait. Now, the hormone thing's the biggest excuse for everyone under the sun. I just enjoy my fishing, mate. You think what you like. I'm not cheating.
Which suggests that it slides off you, the criticism, but does it? I mean, did you take it to heart?
It hurts when nobody in a car park speaks to you when you walk past, and I do no harm to anybody. I'd much rather help somebody. Yeah, we've all got skeletons. Yeah, I was a bit of a football lunatic in my early days, but you didn't go bashing people that had a red shirt on or anything like that. It was just your passion for Chelsea or whoever you supported. I've got a hell of a burning passion for carp fishing. I wouldn't cheat. I wouldn't know how to get them. You've got to be a certified vet or something to get the damn things. I didn't believe there was, but there must be something out there, because a lot of my mates that used to be in the carp fishing match scene has come out of it. So there's something ruffling the feathers. But if people want to think I'm cheating, I can't stop them. But I'd only be cheating myself, wouldn't I? Friggin' hell, Rod would turn in his grave. You know, how he brought me up.
Yeah, and actually something we spoke about on the phone was, this slight regret that you had, Andy, about turning him down for his books.
Yeah. This isn't me, what I'm doing today. You've, Toby, yourself's made it very easy. I've come with a very good friend. It's been lovely. Danny's been very kind to me. He said some very kind words. I think it's brilliant to come and see this setup. It's phenomenal, and what Korda's put back into carp fishing. I owe ever so much to Mainline Baits, who's down the road. They are so good to me, and you've got to give back, haven't you? And I'm out of my comfort zone, but when I got those pictures out the loft, it was, oh my God. And there's another 12, 15 of those, and it's just like, I don't want to start showing my 50s and things like that.
No, but it did mean that you didn't write for Rod.
No, because I just didn't want to be in the limelight. I didn't want. There's too, in my eyes' sake at that time, there's loads better anglers than me about that could put it in a book better than me. I went on the slideshows with Rod and Brian. I did things. I went on all these shows with them. I ended up working for Rod. It was. I wouldn't change a thing. But I'm not comfortable like telling people,
Yeah, I mean, you've said that today. I mean, you're sort of, the number of big fish you've caught is, obscene, but we're not going to necessarily focus on, those pictures and those things. There's going to be some, but there's a lot that you're not, you just don't seem a little bit like this, the attitude you have about the bites. That's it. That's done. Next.
Yeah, it's a bite's a bite. How many times do we get mugged off by a little fish and you could have caught the biggest? And people say, oh, you've done well catching the biggest fish in the lake. Well, I ain't done anything, just chucked a bait out there. If it had been pinched by a little one on the way, I wouldn't have caught it. And there's a massive luck thing, but if you catch enough, you move the luck aside and it's sheer volume.
Is that the way that generally it unfolds for you?
That's how I fish.
Yeah.
Put as many fish on the bank as you can and you'll get the big ones. That's how it's worked on every lake.
Which is, in a kind of lovely way, that's how Rod was. He didn't always get the big one, but he certainly caught a lot, didn't he?
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the bloke never blanked on Savvy. I mean, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
He got banned through the said bagging fish up, and he didn't. He got 2 runs at once on 2, phenomenal angler. I mean,
that's probably arguably the peak of his powers, I suppose, wasn't it?
Yeah, but when he fished Savvy in the 80s, those 2 rotors are some awesome anglers on them. The best. It really was, you know.
And you were lucky enough to guest down there.
Yeah.
Do you have fond memories of that? I mean, obviously you caught as well.
Yeah, it wasn't a big thing in me past, it was good. When I read The Carp Strikes Back again and again and again, when it mentions the bonfire swim, the little bonfire, the slur, I know the bottoms out there because I had baits out there and things like that. And I can say, yeah, I only guested with Rod, but I fished in that era when the Looney rotor and the toad rotor was, and it was, it's like, sat in the Orson barge and they're all in there, all those lads are in there, and it's like, it's just like sat in your own pub in the village just drinking, nobody looked at anybody as being any better than anybody else, and Rod just never saw how good he was, and if he did, he didn't let on, a bloke that went to Redmire, where Redmire did 6 fish a season, and he had 20 fish in his first 3 rotors or whatever, it's like, it was... it was amazing. It really was.
What's your life like at this point? Because obviously you've gone on to have a really successful career, which doesn't always go hand in hand with serious carp fishing obsession, does it? How did you manage that? And also following Chelsea, the punk rock stuff we talked, Oh,
I love music. Yeah. I mean, I've got so many. I love Lambretta scooters. My music. I mean, what John Lydon did to us lads in the early mid-70s, he gave us a life, Chelsea, everything, absolutely everything, you know. And then carp fishing, always there, burning. No matter what you're doing, whether it's on a scooter, watching Chelsea, stood in the shed end in the 70s watching Chelsea, whether you're at a concert, jumping about like a lunatic, that carp fishing fire's burning in your belly all the time.
So how did you find time for a career in amongst all of this?
I don't know. It was a bit mad. It really was, because when I went to France, I get ridiculous amounts of phone calls, and I was trying to work the fishing out, and the phone call would just ring because it was easier to ask me than to do it.
Okay.
But it was my own fault, because my immediate boss said to me, your biggest downfall is you don't delegate. Because I got brought up, if I didn't do it for myself, it didn't get done. It's not a bad way to carry on through life. It never harmed me. I mean, I have a saying, and if I drop down dead now, God, I've enjoyed life. I love life. I don't want to forget the bad moments, just remember the good moments.
And you played football as well,
yeah,
should say.
Yeah, till I was 42.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you miss it?
Yeah, you do, don't you? It was brilliant. That conversation you and I had, it was brilliant. I said to my son-in-law, who's a goalkeeper, good goalkeeper, and he retired 2 years ago, and he's restarted playing again. I said, mate, play till you can't.
Yes.
Yeah, I couldn't walk up the stairs on till Wednesday after I'd finished. I was in the engine room, the midfield, and I'd just work, and eventually 90 minutes went to 70 to 60 to half time, and it was like, I've had it. You know, I've had it.
Do you remember that moment when you made that decision?
Yeah, body made it. My knee would twist, my ankle would go. I had more protection on. I had a knee, you know, both my knees had strappings, both my ankles. I got knocked out one match, I had to come on because somebody got sent off after I'd been knocked. It was like, this is carnage.
The concussion protocols clearly weren't a thing then in the...
You know, it was like, but would you do it again? Yeah. Sure you would. I mean, you retired 2 years ago, yeah?
Yeah, I was 42 as well.
Are you missing it?
My body doesn't miss it. My body feels like my knees feel
Can you
fantastic.
go to the level you played at and watch it?
I didn't play at as good a level as you.
No, I didn't play at a good level. But what I mean is,
I'd like to go.
Did you stand there think I'm still this good? But you wasn't.
No. The game started passing me by, mate. That was the and coupled with the consistent knocks.
Yeah,
I was like,
it was the knocks, wasn't it?
And I wanted to have a pair of knees, because I'm quite heavy, you know, like 17 stone or whatever. I wanted to have a pair of knees that worked into my dotage, you know, and be active for my daughter and stuff.
Yeah.
So I never thought that one of the key pillars of my life, which was football, was going to be gone.
Yeah.
And that I wouldn't miss it that much, and I haven't. It's weird.
Yeah. I didn't miss it, but I couldn't go watch it at the level I played at, because I went once and I thought, I'm still that good.
Yeah.
And my lad said, you're not, Dad. It's like, but then again, he always said I was shit when I was at my peak, you know, so he was like, if he can knock me down, he will do, like.
Yeah.
This is why he loves me going to Norton Disney, so he can smack my arse and catch more fish than me.
He didn't beat around the bush then, no.
No, clearly not.
No,
Said it straight down the back.
No, mate. If he could trip me up, he'd trip me up every day.
Did your lad Carl? Obviously, I knew both of your names, but you know, before when Dan had first suggested that you come on and do this. Did he just process straight into carp fishing? Did you have to encourage him? Like, how did that all work?
He was coming with me from an age like, I mean, that's when he fished in Canada for the World Classics. I think he was either 12 or 13 there, and Danny fished in that. He got rushed to hospital with intensive mosquito poisoning, cost $22,000, but he was insured.
Yeah.
And he still come out and finished fourth.
Right.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal angler. I'm not just saying it because he's my son.
Yeah.
Because he'll smirk when he watches this, but he can catch them. He really can catch them.
But, you know, lots of dads who are obsessive about fishing, their sons never follow them, it seems. But obviously, he did.
Yeah, he just caught from the off. I mean, at the age of, 11 years old, he caught 2 English 40s.
Right. And these are from, presumably, like Waldale.
Woldview.
Woldview, sorry.
Yeah, Rodswater.
Yeah.
Rod let him in earlier than he should have done. The amount of places I've had to fib to get him in. Oh, he's 16 and he's been 12.
Yeah.
And then he starts out fishing, and it's like, whoa, just hang on a minute here.
Yeah.
Whoa, just,
Catch a few less.
Yeah, we don't want looking at here. And then, to be fair, he gets accepted because he's got a passion.
Yeah.
But he's not like me. Can't fish for big fish. He's got to get runs and.
Okay.
You know, and.
But it's almost like you don't accept that you have to fish for big fish in the way that perhaps lots of people would imagine you have to fish for big carp. Your way of fishing for big carp is that as soon as you're not on fish, whether that's the middle of the night or whatever, you're going to move, rather than the whole traditional set your stall out, get a bait going, that kind of thing. That's not you at all, is it?
If I'm on small water with a big target fish in, I don't move. You set your traps, you fish as much of the water allocated to your swim, and job done. Bait and weight. If I'm on a real big water and there's loads of fish, I'm everywhere. Because while I'm getting bites, there's a chance of that big one or big ones, or if there's 840s in a lake, you want 840s caught. And unfortunately you have to double and treble up sometimes before you get your 7th and 8th 40 sort of difference, so you can, and then I can move on. I've moved off loads of lakes I like fishing, but I've got this fear of not being able to fish the next season because I'll drop down dead or something.
So you've ramped everything up in more recent years.
I go like a lunatic.
Yeah,
I go mental.
What does that mean, Andy, in terms of like your week now? You retired from work?
Yeah, I fish 48 hours a week.
What do you do with the rest of the time?
As much as I can do for me kids.
Yeah.
And love my grandkids. Yeah. When I retired, I said to my missus, we won't be mega well off or anything, but we'll manage. Will you go along with it so I can fish?
Did you retire early, by the way?
Yeah, 58-year-old.
Yeah.
I part-owned the company, and then we sold out to a PLC company, and I went back as MD for 20 years, and it just
What line of work was it, Andy?
It was corrugated cases, cardboard boxes.
Oh, wow.
And I took a year and a half out to run catching products, and it was just too much for me. With the fishing and the people ringing up about fishing, it was like, nah. But I don't regret any of it. It's all worked out. It was hard when I was working. Like I worked probably the hours of two 70-year-old blokes work when I retired. I worked a 16-hour day was nothing. Building the company up and working. I had to work from it. It's not a sob story. I had to work at long and hard because my mum and dad didn't have much money. It was my stepdad. My mum worked 2-3 jobs in a day. We always had everything. We always got by. We always got presents at Christmas. Didn't get a lot in between. Grew up with jumble cell clothes. Didn't know anything else. All my mates did. And this is why punk rock was such a big thing when it come along, because it all fitted jumble cell clothes. It was wicked. And just moved on. We started at a local company, worked up to a supervisor, designer, manager, left there, worked for Rod. Another company set up, sort of wanted me to run that, and
went
from there. And you're handed a card in life, aren't you? And it's how you play it. You play it to the best of your ability. You don't know what's right or wrong. You don't know what's right. How many times you go in the pub. If you went back to where you grew up as a kid, there'll be them blokes sat in the training shoes, sat round that same bar, saying, "Oh, it's all right for you." No, it isn't. You've got to sometimes just make it happen, haven't you? If you're given a chance, yeah, it's scary. Not everybody will take it, but if you're given a chance, just go for it. Life's too short, isn't it?
So the trade-off is, though, that you sold the business. You were able to retire at 58, and then what did you think? Right, okay, I'm going to go even harder with the fishing.
Well, in 2 years, I've gone through 3 syndicates because it was like, I'm going to fish it till I catch them, and they're very fortunate to me. 3 months, the first one, then about the same for the second one.
I mean, we should probably say at this point that kind of prolific nature of the results you were having didn't always endear you to the people around, Andy, did it?
No.
I mean, let's go for like probably the most dramatic example. We're not going to name the lake, but talk to us a little bit about the results you had on what is quite a famous lake that now you're not a member of.
It looked after me. It was kind to me.
Yeah.
Thank the lake every time you leave. You know, always thanked, you know, whether people think I'm nuts, when I drive away from the lake I'm fishing, I always thank it. It was very kind to me. I caught ridiculous amounts of fish.
I mean, I think you said that one hit, just as an example.
I had 82 fish in 48 hours. It was really, really prolific. It was September. It was going to happen. I looked at the weather. I got the swim I wanted. Lee had bombed it up for me a week or two before. He's terrible at spomming. It was all right, and but I had, you know, 40 fish hits and 30 fish hits, and I can see why it winds people up. You know, them other people that were competing with me hadn't been fishing 30, 40 years for carp. They hadn't had the benefits of Rod Hutchinson showing them. They hadn't got the benefit of a bait company giving them bait. I'm very, very fortunate. I'd rather remember the good times I had. I re-met, I fished with Lee 30 years before, and then I met him on this lake again, and it was as if we'd never... So I've got loads of brilliant memories about it. And the owner, very, very grateful for him.
Yeah.
You know, lovely bloke. He let me fish it. There's no nasties. The finishing telephone call wasn't nasty or anything like that. But, you know, it's another water that somebody said you've done, and it's like, really? They're only fish. I think that winds people up. How many you had now? Well, they're only fish. Yeah, but they're only fish.
Yeah.
And then I realised I better stop saying that. It's winding people up. It's like, really? I'm more interested what Chelsea do at the weekend than another bite now, because I've had several. But until you get that first bite, I don't care anything that happens in the world till I get that first bite. You know, but, you know, like there's people getting killed in wars all over the world, and
you're getting kicked off places because...
And there's people puncturing your tyres because
Right.
you're fishing. And it's like, really? You know, really, lads?
What do your family think about that?
I don't try and, you know, my missus can't understand it, because she's one of these. She's a bit of a Florence Nightingale. She'd help anybody. She sees no wrong in anybody. You know, she'd rather blame me than anybody. It must have been my fault. Righto, fair enough. You know, and it's... But, you know, I walk through a car park with 12 anglers packing up. They all turn their backs on me. They'd all do a China run and not get anything for me. You know, it's not nice. But
Do you think that the whole hormone thing was the main problem, because they presumed...
No, because it was before that as well.
Right.
Yeah, it was before that. Yeah.
Because it seemed for a while that anyone who did well, you know, you were the hormone aspersions.
Well, it became an
cast.
easy tag to put on somebody, that, didn't it? But before, as I said earlier, it was because I fished with rod, because I got free bait, because I got lots of free bait, because I got privileges on syndicates. What? That's a new one.
How do you keep enjoying your fishing in that kind of environment?
Just love fishing.
So it would bounce off you, would it, that stuff?
Yeah, a bit disappointing when, like, the bailiff rung up and says, mate, I said, fair enough, mate, thanks for all your help, and just deleted everybody, because I just, you know, then you get all the people sending you messages of what people say, don't want to know, I'm not on there anymore.
Yeah.
You know, but on this particular lake, I've got one over on them because I caught the big one and didn't let any of them know.
That was a 58 pounder, was it?
Yeah. And they don't know which fish it is, and I won't even tell Carl, because I don't do Facebook, Instagram or anything. Every time I catch a fish, let's have a look at it, and he goes, puts it on his Facebook. It's like, I don't want it to... So I've stopped sending them pictures at the minute, like, but I wouldn't purposely send him this picture, because I knew he'd put it straight on, and I just think, you've banned me for no reason at all, but I've caught you big fish and you don't know. You know, and it's a bit sad, really, to think like that, but I'm not going to tell them. You know, it's like, it's my memory. And
well, I suppose it's why people go fishing, and your reason is not about that photo, is it? You've said that already.
It's not about falling out with people. It's not about animosity. It's about enjoying what you do.
Do you contrast what you see now with the way things were when you were first on the scene, like at the horse and barge days? You know, that seems like it was probably a bit different.
I take everything as it changes. You've got to, like a lot of my mates say to me, I don't know how the hell you carp fish now. I love it. I love waking up with a new day and going to bed with the old day, and everything that might happen in between. Love it. I never stop thinking carp. I can have a total conversation with somebody about anything, and I'm still thinking about carp fishing. Yeah, if somebody sees me in a restaurant, now mate, are you going out to work? Hate talking carp fishing.
You compartmentalise it.
Yeah.
You're either in that situation or you're in a different part of life.
Yeah, it's like, I don't want to seem disinterested about their carp fishing, but carp fishing is for carp.
It's for the bank.
It's for the bank. Yeah, don't mug your missus off that you brought out for a meal and start talking to me about. I mean, on the way here, my phone never stopped ringing, and if Lee says, "Why don't you answer him?" Because all people say, "Sit out, mate."
Would you normally be fishing on a Monday?
I would, but my rota's just been changed to Wednesday, so I can only do one night a week, which I still love. It's brilliant, but they still think I'm fishing. But they'll just ring up. They'll be in Kent, Essex, up north. It's in out, mate. Well, yeah, but but that's a carp angler, isn't it? It's I think when they ask you in a restaurant, it's rude for the partners, because let's face it, who the hell wants to know about carp fishing when there's all them other interests? That's what's a carp angler's not famous. He's only famous in his little circle, as Danny once said. You go out to a party filled with beautiful women, and they don't want to know about stinky carp you've caught in the week, do they?
Not that I've ever seen, but
no, and it's like let's keep it on a level, and credit to this setup, and credit to everything else, and all the fisheries and how it's coming on, but enjoy it for what it is now, just like I have done all the way along.
I'd like to talk to you about things that you did after Catch 'em, I suppose. There's quite a few venues that I don't want to miss out on talking at least a little bit about, and one of those was a place that people will have heard about in more recent years, but actually was probably arguably extremely famous in the 90s, and that is the lakes at Baston Fen in Lincolnshire. What are your memories of what would have been presumed the original syndicate on there?
I loved it. Again, another complex of lakes, Long Island Park, Birch, Prom, all had 30s
Which
in.
you can't fish all of those now, I don't think.
No,
certainly only a couple of them now.
And then there was the big one at the back of the ocean. Loved it. Again, race through the fish so I could get off.
How do you race through the fish on a place like that, though?
I only have one way of fishing. It was just, enjoyed it. Fished it with a dear friend who passed, Martin Atherton. Lovely bloke. Fished through the 80s and 90s with him. Smashing bloke. Rid Lambretters, supported Chelsea, and mad on carp fishing. Iconic, really.
I can't imagine why you got on.
It's mad, but we had some good years on there. Fished right through winter. Moved from when we had the big ones out one lake, moved on to another, and come across some fish we didn't think was in some of the lakes.
Really?
So it was surprising. It was
like, which ones in particular?
Park.
Right.
It had 2 30s in it. It was amazing. I didn't know there was in there.
We have got a couple of photos, albeit these are just ones we grabbed from your albums. Of which I think there are many at home as well. But there's some types, if you want to just fire them. This is what people would still recognise, I think, as a classic Baston Fen type fish.
Yeah.
Where was that one from? Do you remember?
That was Long Island.
Okay. Yeah, and again, a lake that's had quite a bit of publicity over the last few years. Do you still do you recognise the lake when you see it on film, if you have?
No, when I fished the lake, I don't take no notice of it after I fished it. It's done. I don't hang on to things.
Yeah. Is that a 30-pounder?
Yeah.
What was the fishing like on there? What did it take to succeed?
A lot of people failed. Very, very weedy. Frightened a lot of people off. Tiny little holes.
So your dinner plate thing again?
Yeah. It was when we was making bait rockets, so we could get them further, and they didn't wobble and move, and then, we had to make them in those days.
Does that mean the accuracy is an important thing in your angling?
It is 110 yards out in an hole in the weed the size of this table.
Yeah.
and you try to get 2 baits in it.
Okay.
When you shit at casting like I was, it become a lot harder than my mate Martin, who was a lot better caster than I was. And you just have to up your game and get them out there. And if you had a crosswind, it was, you had to decide whether to move your baits first thing in the morning when the wind hadn't got up, because you'd never get them in those holes in the weed when the wind got up. But it worked. We did what we needed to do. Lovely times, met some lovely people, lovely part of the country. Flat again, got beat up by the weather. If it was sunny and dry, you got all dust in your eyes. If it was peeing down with rain, you couldn't stop it. If it was windy, don't put a bivvy up. It was like you had to fish to the weather circumstances and conditions, but it's good.
Another one here, the 31.5. Which one was that from? Again, a classic sort of dink type.
I can't remember. It was. I think that might be the big one in Park. That was a big surprise. That fish. That put. The unfortunate thing about that capture was there was me and my friend fishing it. I caught that, and half the complex went on Park because that. I mean, what a fish!
Yeah.
The
huge slabs on the back.
Yeah.
There. Yeah. Deep bodied.
Yeah.
Very much like a lot of those fish.
Yeah.
What was the? Did you fish the ocean? Obviously.
Yeah.
You weren't at all daunted by this huge sheet of water.
I used to bait where the little boating house was in the corner.
Okay.
I used to have 2 rods in Long Island, 1 in the ocean, and I caught more out the ocean.
Really?
Yeah.
What is that? The classic sort of cliche that if you're on them, big pit fish are easy to catch.
Yeah, ever so.
Yeah.
They come in that ocean bay, not used to spin fish for. Loads of boilies, really high withy pull stiff hinge. It couldn't fail. It was easy.
Really?
If there'd been anglers sat around it in bivvies, it'd have made it 100 times harder.
By a withy pull stiff hinge, what do you mean?
The 1 foot curved,
a huge,
massive great curve out.
You're
like
describing an arc that's probably about sort of 10 inches in height.
If you straightened it out, it was massive.
Yeah.
Oh, it's caught me some fish.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you still use that sort of thing to this day?
Oh yeah.
Right.
It's nearly like a small zig rig.
Right.
You get that on a really high plateau, and you put really high withy pull hinge on. You're up there where those fish are on proper bottom gear, aren't you?
Yeah. So we're talking a C-shaped curve that comes from the swivel and ends up back at the swivel, if you like, above it.
That's right.
Okay.
Goes right out here.
Yeah.
Like half a table tennis bat.
No way.
And the hook sits really. I mean,
big hook as well. Is that not necessary once you've got the?
Dan's not happy with my rigs.
Really?
He said they're horrible.
He said that he did ask me to ask you about them though. So, yeah. What?
How rubbish did he say they were? Come on, be honest.
No, I don't think he did. To be fair, because he sees what you catch, so he knows that they can't be that bad.
Yeah.
Why?
I just don't put anything into them.
No, I mean in the sense of
as long as they don't tangle.
Okay, but I don't mean that. I mean, why, given the lengths you go to in every other aspect of your fishing, do you use something that's so obviously different to most people? Because a C-shaped, curved hook section the size of a blooming table tennis bat is very rare.
Yeah, so he's using a throwing stick nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
How many fish does that catch you?
I love using a stick.
Yeah, I do. And boilies.
Yeah.
And 18mm boilies.
This is an interesting question, actually, because it relates directly to that. I always remember reading Rod's stuff about dotting boilies over a tennis court, let's say, or a whole bay. Do you believe that fish can equate that as a single baited area, or are they finding these as individual baits?
I think they're aware. They're on top of the game, aren't they? It's their environment. They know it's like when they switch on. Why do they switch on when they switch on? Why have you not seen a fish jump, and then you see a fish jump at that end of the lake, and then you see one jump at that end of the lake? Why does somebody get a bite? We've been through it 100 times. Why do the bites come together? It's a pattern. They know. They're switched on. Why do you have to wait 48 hours and catch 6 in an afternoon? Why don't they come 2 a day? Because they don't want to. It's on their terms, but you've just got to get it right. And by putting, free on the spot works. I've always fished for big fish. I'm not a big fish angler, but I was fishing with one of the Korda boys on Billy's last winter, and his rigs were fantastic.
Yeah.
Rob
Burgess, yeah,
what
yeah.
an angler.
Mm.
Brilliant. What a lovely bloke, you know. And his rigs were that long.
Mm-hmm.
And mine looked like a car boot sale gone wrong. That long. Yeah, it was fish for fish.
Really?
And he sort of like, I said, is it up there in our heads, mate? Does it matter?
Mm.
You know, is it really that different? You know, and then the underwater videos could prove it is.
I'd love to see one of your rigs on underwater, one of these great big hinge things.
The carp would be laughing at them like that, wouldn't they?
Well, clearly not.
You know, but really? Look, really?
What do you think happens when they are approaching a rig like that?
I've seen them taken.
Have you?
Amazing. Absolutely. How they take a high hinge is so different. They're stopped, they're barely moving, and it's gone.
Okay.
And the fish is like been put into freeze frame. It's, oh shit. And it doesn't do a thing. And then it can twist, and then it thinks, I'm hooked, and it's off.
Mm.
And I think there's a long rope to hang themselves, isn't they?
Mm.
And it's, you know, don't get me wrong, a loose fish on them as well. But I'm a big fan of the hinge because some fantastic hooks out there now, and I sometimes look at a Ronnie and I think it's all metal bending around that big rubbery lip, where an hinge is built to go around that rubbery lip.
Mm.
But you can't knock a Ronnie or a spinner rig because it puts so many fish on the bank. But when you're fishing for fish that aren't really feeding hard and heavy, and you might get one chance, you might not come back and suck it in and out and in and out and in and out. You know, I said on a previous, when we was doing a winter thing with my lad on Norton, sometimes I think your up bait's the first to go, or it can be the last thing to go over a bed of bait, and it's whatever fish moves in.
Mm.
I've seen the smaller fish, the little 20s and that, avoid a eye with your pull rig. They won't go anywhere near it. So you're doing that with a lot of the fish when you want to catch the bigger ones.
Yeah.
You know, for the angler that wants to get a lot of bites, you might be cutting some of your bites back by fishing it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so
Can you live with that though? Because you like bites.
yeah, but there comes a point when you should have caught the big one, you know, and you've had 100 and something fish and you haven't had one of them big ones. It's like, well, it all went on really high hinges after that.
So what were you using before in this instance?
I made me hinge 2 inches higher. That's all I did.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah.
I caught them all on the Hunter's Moon.
Right.
A stupid amount. I had six 30s and the 56. So again, the weather catches you the fish, the storms catch you the fish.
I don't believe you're that passive though, Andy. It feels like a lot of the time you're saying that when it comes right, it's going to come right anyway,
Yeah.
irrespective if it's you in that swim or the next mate, as long as his rigs are out in a reasonable position. But it doesn't seem like that you're just going to let the sort of the weather and the moon, whatever, take over and be passive until that point.
You've got to make it happen, haven't you, to a point.
Mm.
You know, like I watched the when it was all around the table and Tom Maker, he's not into the moons. Well, who's going to argue? Tom's catch rate's phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know, who's right, who's wrong. It's what you believe. You know, that lad can catch fish anywhere. All these lads, these full-time anglers here, who's going to knock what they catch? They're awesome anglers. And you just paddle your own boat, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you get the rewards, I mean, it beats me up when I'm struggling to catch a big one. It really beats me up because it's like, it still should have come. So
Maybe you just need to go longer and longer on the hinge every time. And
yeah, but when you've repeated all the 40s,
Yeah.
it's like, hang on a minute here. And I know I ain't lost them big ones. No, I ain't. Dan says you've got to have lost them. I haven't, mate. I haven't.
would this be Baston, the new
Yeah.
Baston, if you like, the
Yeah.
embryo lake? Yeah.
And it's like, how can you know, like, what is it, 110, 120 fish in there, and you've had 146?
Why are you catching so many of them? Because I know that's not how it is over there.
I must be using hormones.
But when you look around, what is it you do? If you're trying to be objective,
It's passion, mate. That's all it is. It's you've got to learn where to put your baits. The brilliant anglers on there. I'm not that they can hold their own against anybody. Do they want that next bite as bad as I want it?
And how does that manifest itself? This desire. Are you basically saying that potentially you're moving at 1 a.m. because of that?
I'm literally up and down that bank all night.
How are you sleeping amongst all of this?
Catnapping.
Right.
I can't sleep. I'm like a wound up spring. I just love it. I love being out. It's sad, really, isn't it?
No, it's great that you have something that's all consuming, I think.
But I'm just as excited going back that way through the gate to go home, see my wife, my grandkids, get told by my son how useless I am at fishing, and my daughter cadge loads of money off me, and it, back to reality. Just as much as I enjoy coming through, it's I love it. But I think if it was too one-sided, this is where you can probably let it get boss of you, and you mustn't. I'm not saying anyone that does is wrong. Who am I to say what's wrong? I'm just doing my little bit.
Yeah, I mean, talk to us a bit about Baston Syndicate, which is a private syndicate, isn't it? It's unusual for Embryo in that it's a syndicate that's sort of like invite at the moment, I guess. There's a couple of big ones in there, weren't there? Was it those two that you really struggled to get to? Have you got any idea why that happened?
There's two. I saw a picture of Richard Cox holding the friendly, and I thought, I have got to catch that fish. I've got to get in that lake and catch that fish. And then when I got in the lake, Tell showed me a picture of the sub, which used to be called the saddleback, and that was like the best fish I'd ever seen. I thought, they are the two, and that was the fire.
And how did you find the fishing on there? And what was it that kept you caught over 100 carp from there? So what were the things that you did right?
It's a weedy water. They act different time through the year. You have to change with the way the fish are. I changed my fishing so much.
Okay.
Single hook baits didn't last long at all. Caught me about 50 fish. Then I'd changed them.
And would that generally have been in the spring?
I got on there last rota in March, and I weren't using singles after the end of April. Changed my fishing completely in May. Changed it.
What made you change?
How the fish were. You could see they were acting different. They were grouping up, dependent on warmth of weather. There were one end of the lake or the other, or two lots at the same. The middle of the lake could be barren. You knew when it was going to come through, and so traps set accordingly. Used a lot of bait then, ever so much bait.
I'm interested in this point. You've touched it on a couple of times actually, Andy, where you're happy for fish to know your bait is there even when they're not feeding. Does that mean that location-wise, it isn't all about necessarily that first hour of light? You're happy enough to set up close to fish that are visible in the day, let's say the middle of the day?
Yeah, as long as they aren't disturbing any other angler. I treat anglers how I like to be treated. I would never ramp up next to somebody and bang 4.5 ounce leads out and start spomming. It would be like, nah, because I'm fishing for the same fish he is, so I'm not going to fish there. I like to do me. So I feel if I go around that side of him, I'm not damaging his fishing. That's whether I'm right or wrong. Or I know a lot of people can't do that because lakes are too crowded, but I think on the syndicate we're talking about, there's a really good set of angler that, everybody's happy for everyone to catch. Nobody's, isn't there?
In the sense of the tactical side of things, just to return to that point, I in the past have thought the only sightings worth having are the ones when they're feeding. So that's first thing in the morning during the summer, let's say, maybe in the night during the winter and autumn. Any other sightings kind of like may as well, dismiss. But Rod said to you, a fish that shows somewhere twice, investigate it.
Yeah.
And that could be any time of day?
I caught every single hour of the day.
Yeah.
Freezing cold, hot, but you had to move in different areas because it was very apparent where they picked up, where to move from that island to that island, round this backside, tight and back out again, which are where I think a lot of people thought they went into a bay, but there's several pods of fish went back, and then you started getting big hits in between plate, and it was the weed beds. You know, like this year could be different because the weed's been treated, and it'll be like a new lake. So an old 6 yards out there won't be that spot anymore because it ain't got that great big weed bed either side, backward and front of it. So it's good again because you've got to rethink things.
I'm getting a really strong sense that patrol routes are massive in your fishing.
100%. When fish are moving, they're catchable. If they're not moving, they become...
So that's, again, it sort of seems to be totally the opposite of what a lot of received wisdom is, that you're not going to catch them if it's a passing spot. You're going to catch them at the end of their routes. But you're not thinking like that at all.
No. I think you can overbait. You can miss a trick when they're passing. You can overbait because a passing fish is you're pulling them down. If you're there before they get there, you can really have a session. But they're catchable all day long. You get the loners that are catchable any time. The pack fish can sometimes be steered like sheep, especially up to spawning when the weather can make them chase and then stop chasing. And they've got... Feeding's probably the last thing it is. I mean, why do they take a zig? It's not because they're hungry, is it? It's because it's a nuisance to them sometimes, and it's there where they are. Well, if they find out where they're swimming, and you find a plateau at that sort, and you put a baited area there, it's going to go.
Okay.
It's going to get at some point because they know as soon as they know it's there.
Yeah.
At some point, you've caught one.
Okay. I want to talk a bit about bait because obviously you had privileged access to the inner workings of Hutchie's mind at times. What were the things that you learnt about, let's say, latterly, so the boilie era? What were the things you learnt about boilie fishing that you now continue? You talk about liquids. I'm interested in that kind of thing, and tying this into the fact that fish are often sitting over your bait, and you know at some point they're going to feed on them.
Yeah. I've fished some lakes where I only put liquid in, and then I feed when I'm leaving if I'm not disturbing another. Heavy, like your fats, your liquids you get now, was spoiled. I mean, before you could get your fats, i.e. your smart liquids and all your molasses liquid, I used to use tons of if there wasn't any bream in the water, because if there's some bream in the water, it's like a no-go.
Okay.
But it would go down in a wind, in a big pull on the water, it would go down. And it definitely had an effect. Right time of the year, you'd pull fish down when they wouldn't go down for your bait. Never ever stop spomming, spom all the time.
Is that because a boilie inherently is not as attractive as a liquid that's soluble and sort of immediately in the water column?
I think it just gets their interest up.
Okay.
I mean, like when I first started using smart liquids, the fish weren't feeding on them; they were playing in it. They were playing in the big slick.
Yeah.
It was like, them fish, what are they doing? They were flanking on top and turning over, and so you go out in the boat quietly, and you can't go over the top, and they are. That water's sort of like not the same as all the other water, and they're investigating it. Yeah, let's face it, for lake floods, where do the carp go? In the flooded bit. You've got to chase them out when the water starts going. They go out, for big lake floods from a river, they're finding carp in the garden a mile down the road. They're so inquisitive. Well, you put anything in, and they're not long on it. They're soon on it. Whether you can get a bite from it or not is down to how hard you try, I suppose, or, again, if the fish are feeding. So
to get this straight, at times you're spomming just liquid out.
Oh yeah.
And that's on your trip you're actually fishing.
Yeah.
And would that be time of year dependent, or is there times that you tend to do that as a?
How much bait's going in? If everyone's spomming bait in, I'm not competing, so I'll put some liquid out hanging. So
to everyone else, it looks a lot like you're just spomming a few boilies out. Well, ultimately, you're not.
Well, John Miller, who I met last year on there, he sussed me, bless him.
Right.
I got a text. There's no in that spom.
Is it fly odd sort of?
I said, well, how's it getting out there then, John? You're putting liquid in it. I said, oh, right-o. And he come round and he went, how do you get the liquid to stay in? And I said, look at the top of my bivvy. Oh, right, yeah. Then you wash it, or it's like I think there's an edge there.
How long have you been doing this? And pre-smart liquid, let's say, what you've said molasses. Any other things you've tried?
Molasses. When did I first get molasses?
I mean, that's an ancient sort of like.
Mate, honestly, it's the first thing I put in with anything. It's the first thing I chucked over boilies.
What did Hutchie think of it?
Molasses meal. Yeah, he liked rods. Number one thing. I used to make rods bait for Savay. Liver powder.
Okay.
Liquid liver aid is the true liquid liver. South American liver powder is, you can't get any more, is the liver powder. Nothing else.
Incredibly soluble.
That's all he fished.
Right.
Liver. Very, very expensive bait. But, it's got there's something in it that I like, Like I make absolutely potent hook baits for this time of the year. They like it, but beyond this time of the year, they're no better than anybody else's hook baits. But there's a time and a place for everything, and it's the long road.
It's understanding when.
Yeah.
So these potent hook baits, are we talking flavours or are we talking soluble elements that they can detect?
Flavours, I suppose it's a flavour, but it's garlic, so is it a flavour? It's a natural thing, garlic, isn't it? It's like when I've got 25 kilo of hemp in a bucket, it'll have a dozen cloves of garlic in with it. Garlic goes, and then I don't use garlic, because garlic this time of the year is awesome. I found that out through my own lake. I used to put garlic in with the feed to get the fish cleaned up, to get all the parasites off them, because it just makes them drop off them. And I realised just how much they fed more on it.
Do you think they know inherently it's good for them? Is that like going back? It's a bit Fred Wilton, but do you know what I mean?
Well, it's the clay thing, isn't it? Why, like everybody thinks they're digging bloodworm and they're just in the clay.
They want the clay.
They don't want the bloodworm, they're in the clay. Why they got clay all on one side of them and they look like two different fish? It's not because they're only digging bloodworm up on that side. Here's
a question for you that I it's a fun little question. Have you ever caught a carp with clay on it, covered in clay?
Oh, crikey, yeah.
Because I don't think I have,
Yeah.
Sometimes,
I've had to wash them before.
Have you?
Yeah, yeah. And they, certain times of the year again. How did you get your carp holes? Clay bottom lake. They ain't got spades, have they?
No.
It's amazing. And they're deep. They're 6 feet deep, some of them. And it's, how the flank down and that body movement. When you try and hold one when it's doing that, the power in it.
Oh, incredible! And that they can generate. Is the potent garlic allied with a bright colour as well, or are you more of a match the hatch kind of guy?
It's just whatever takes me. It's like I do find out some weeks it's yellow, some weeks it's pink, some weeks it's white. If everybody's on white, I'll go in with pink. Yellow. It's just basically doing something a little bit different than the bloke down the bank's doing. It might not be the right thing to do. He might get to and you realise I've got to switch on to yellow because he's catching. But yeah, it's like the three on the spot. The one that goes first, you change the other two onto, don't you?
Usually, yeah.
And but when you're fishing I don't fish on the spot. I fish as much water as I've got allocated to me without mucking the next angler's run of fish up. Or I'd never fish for the same run of fish that the angler next to me. I'd bring it in or change it, and I give myself more options. So I shouldn't bag up on highly stocked waters because I'm.
But you do.
No more than other people.
Well, I think Norton would suggest that you do.
Yeah, but it's like, have I brought something new to the table and it maybe won't work another year? I don't know. Are
we talking about the hemp approach on there, let's say?
I've used a lot of hemp this winter. Yeah, like when I was on Pettits, I probably used 300 kilo of hemp in.
Let's chuck some shots up from Pettits, mate, while we talk about this, Toast. But yeah, this was you demolished Pettits, which is the hardest of the lakes, I think, isn't it, at Norton?
Yeah,
in winter.
Yeah, there's some fantastic fish in there. What a fishery that place is.
Why did you decide that it was going to be hemp?
Because I've caught so many fish on hemp in winter from 20, 30 years ago.
And you thought, all right, I know this is good, I've caught on it before, it's a thin oil, whatever it is that's attractive about it, but I'm going to go big with it. What made you decide to do that?
The birds can't eat it
Mm-hmm.
because they get fed up of diving for it. It can't go off, so the carp always eat it.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic bait. It really is.
Does that mean that you were looking to get back in areas? Obviously, this is a busy day ticket, so that was never going to be guaranteed.
I had to wait for swims. I'd go on turners or billies until a swim.
So you were keen to get back into areas?
Because I probably put 40 kilo in when I left on the Wednesday, and I come back in on the Monday.
Do you think it surprised people, like even the lads at work up there, the way that you were able to catch them on over such quantities in the winter?
I think they disbelieved me until they saw it happening. And
what sort of numbers are we talking from that winter? That
never blanked.
Right.
Caught up to 5 on. No, caught 12. 148 hours, and then I had 10 another, and it weren't doing bites anywhere else. I'm not trying to be big-headed for 1 minute. It was the sheer amount of bait I was putting out. I baited a weedy spot so they would take the weed away because it was better to present the bait, so I wasn't going over any humps and bumps.
Okay, so you literally decided that was the spot that you felt...
That's a massive thing you have to do. You have to decide where you want to catch them from.
Okay.
You've got to try and put the percent back in your court. If they're coming round that way and you're only catching them there, and you know there's more fish coming here but you can't present, you clear that off.
Mm-hmm. So the underwater topography, you're imagining, or you know that these fish are navigating it a certain way. Once again, patrol routes, right?
Yeah, when at Baston, I go out to net a fish in the boat that weeded me up, and because my line was laying like that because of the weed, I'd net the fish, unhook it, roll it up, put it on the unhooking mat in the boat, clip the unhooking mat up, chuck the drag over, and go back to bank.
Mm-hmm.
And all I was doing was making a roadway to lay my line in. So every time I went out to net a fish, I chucked the drag in on the way back.
Just efficiency, just getting
and
more.
It would lay the line down like, and it doesn't have to be bang on the bottom, but you're indicating that bite quicker if it's not up and down.
I mean, Dan had asked and had mentioned, and you, as indeed you did earlier, about the fact that you use absolute bowstrings.
Yeah.
And is that one thing that's never changed?
No, that was my son that got me into that. I was old school, slack, 2-foot rod under the water. I still have my rod tips under the water, but they're bent backwards. The fish bounce off them. You know, it's like no line bite. Bleep, fish on.
Right. And what kind of... So talk to me about... You mentioned earlier that it's good that the fish can see the lines. You're actually happier that they know they're there?
Yeah, because you're not spooking them.
Right.
They swim down them. I'm not saying you don't spook them sometimes, but I think 80% of the time the fish know the lines are there. They know the weeds there, they know the kelp's there. They manage and swim around everything that's natural there.
Mm-hmm.
Then bowstring tight lines. Don't forget, I've not got 3 going on a spot. I've only got the 1, so it's, you know, and then the 1 there, and then maybe 1 a lot shorter there.
Okay.
But even when I'm fishing near in, it's bowstring tight.
And what does that look like at the rig end, do you think, or do you know?
Well, with a 4.5 ounce lead, you just tight to the lead, and that's it. I'm naked all the way to the lead.
Would that be down to a lead clip then?
Yeah. Like I always fish a lead clip. Won't fish helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know, my lead's gone straight away. It's just confidence in it.
So the fact you're fishing line all the way down, is that generally must mean a thick, like a
20-pound long shot,
0.43 or whatever it is. Yeah,
you can just put them in with pulling weed beds in and 110 yards. You know, just walking back and winding to it, and they're coming very, very slow. But there's no stretching that line, and it's just you dig. You know, if the fish shakes the weed off, then you've got a hell of a battle on your hands. You know, for the last 10 minutes near the rod. But it is what it is.
Do you get any pushback from fisheries about the fact you don't use leaders ideally?
No, if I've got to use leaders, I will do. Yeah, I won't break any fishery rules. You know, I've got my own lake, and people say, well, just no nuts, just be sensible and fish how you know, and there's big fish in there. You know, I don't think you lift any more scales like
no,
that.
I've heard that levelled before, and it's not something I can see happening.
No.
If you actually look at the way fish are often played underwater, they're well away from the line a lot of the time, aren't they? So.
We always thought it went down, but it doesn't. It can't when you think about it.
Not really.
You can't, else you'd be pulling the fish backwards,
Yeah.
wouldn't you? Yeah, it doesn't happen.
I guess when they're powering away,
Yeah.
it could run alongside it, but
Yeah, it's always up.
For me, it seems more.
But it's right out
And
here,
you're talking
isn't
a
it?
thick mono as well, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's nothing thin.
Yeah. If I thought I was damaging fish care, it's 100%.
Mm.
If I catch a fish and it's bleeding from the gills, I won't take it out of water.
Straight away, yeah.
Go
Which can be a thing in the spring, can't it?
Leave it in the net because
Yeah.
you don't want to release it quickly either.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've done it with really big fish. Just tilt the net, let it go, and it goes off.
Mm.
I wouldn't want somebody to take one out of my lake that's bleeding from the gills.
I mean, can we talk your lake? Because obviously it's somewhere you've got a long history with.
My lake is up on top of the Lincolnshire Wolds.
Right.
I rent it.
Is it near to?
It's the other way on to Rod's lakes. Rod had Dolly Mill and Wolview.
Yes.
Now Rich has got Dolly Mill, and Darius runs Wolview. And my lake's the other way. I regret not taking Rod up to my lake. He was deteriorating in health when it never got to be. But it is what it is.
Had Rod lost his fire for fishing towards the end?
Yeah, it was the latter years. It was all about football. He'd get me round. If Arsenal were playing, he was an Arsenal fan.
Yeah.
He'd get me round to watch the game, and he just wanted to talk football. And then at the end of the night, he had out hand, and one or two, mate. You know, and it was.
But he didn't really want to know.
He knew I didn't give a damn about telling him. It was one of them. I never did tell him what I caught. He used, where you been? When I worked for him, well, where you been? And I wouldn't tell him. For aggravation's sake, like.
Yeah. No, actually, before we move on from that, I kind of I can feel down on my shoulder here a little bit. I do want to just go back to the Norton thing with the hemp before we leave that. Because there's a little bit to be explored there. I think this is a very popular day ticket.
Yeah.
You absolutely smashed it. How much are you introducing from the word go? And is your hemp, aside from the garlic, is that all you're doing? A bit of garlic in there.
I put me bait through the Ridge Monkey Crusher twice, so it was.
These boilie going in as well.
Really
then.
fine.
Yeah.
You wouldn't recognise it as a boilie.
It's like sand almost.
And sometimes it was giving me that better spom
weight and
it just worked. And I was grinding it up on the bank. I was putting bait in all the time. I was amazed how much. I thought, I can remember being there one session and it was freezing. It was like frost on your bivvy and your rods, and I hadn't had a bite at bite time, and I put about 40 kilo out, and it's like, no. And then out of bite time, I had 5 bites, and it was like, it's.
What do you think's going on there? Like, are you literally making it impossible to ignore for them?
Yeah, that's what I think. I just think it's in the face. I think when a carp knows there's a big bed of bait there, at some point, it has to eat it. It has to. It just can't. I think whether it takes 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, they will eat it. They will go. Sometimes it's got to be right for them. Sometimes, the wind might change and that bed's out, and you might get fish picking at it. But when the podder fish it, they just clean it up. I mean, I've seen them clean 40 kilo of bait up on my lake. It's like you're out in the boat cutting the trees down and things like that. It's still there. The next day it's still there. The next day it's still there. Just have a look before I go home. It's gone. And there's no cloudy water. It's like, right out. And you realise it's nothing. You get half a dozen 40s moving.
What are you, how are you presenting your hook baits to get bites over what is an incredibly fine carpet of hemp and crushed boilie then?
I was using a very small piece of boilie, very small, with a cut down piece of plastic on the top. And it was on the bottom on the hemp. It seemed pointless putting anything over the top.
So really a big departure from the hinge situation.
Absolute
like the opposite. Yeah.
But you're fishing for fish that are moving so much slower that, are going to sit tilted upwards instead of hoovering it up on the way past. You're relying on more fish, the sheep thing, one fish feeds another, and it was like that because I'd often get 2 bites and it's like, no, one would go and the rod would go. It couldn't do any more because I was locked up solid.
Yeah.
And it just takes the pleasure away, doesn't it? Because you try to get that one in as fast as you can do. And this one's going to weed you up. So it's like, But it was sheer volume of bait that made that happen.
And what sort of numbers were we talking about for the in the end on Norton when you really had it going?
I think I had over 30 30s. I had loads of grow-ons, sort of up to £18, which I didn't count.
And these are fish that have spawned in the lake.
Yeah, I didn't count
right?
them, and they were up to like £18, so they weren't accountable fish, and probably as many 20s as the 30s. I never did get a 40, but I had one of the £40 commons that was ounces under. I had some phenomenal 37s, 8s and 9s. You know, them fish are jet black. They're proper carp.
What was Dan's reaction when you were absolutely clumping these?
I don't know, because it was all for me.
Mm.
You know, it wasn't to get
Did
a
you tell
label
him?
stuck up. No.
Right.
No, it was...
He'd have been buzzing though.
When he come up to me at Norton, he just said, "Are you the one that hammered Pettits?" And it was like, I had one or two. You know, it's like, it's not, but it's about...
Dan's always interested in what people are doing though. You know, it's...
I get that now. Yeah. The thing is with me, I don't want to like overstep my mark. I was fortunate to be on there. Matt Pettit was very good. He used to come and I like Matt Pettit. What a lovely bloke. He used to come and have a coffee with me. You know, he used to say, "Yeah, don't mate." Yeah, one or two, and he left it at that. And it was brilliant. And the bailiffs, bless them, I'd wake up in the morning, there's another 2 landing nets there and another 2 retainers for me. And all they asked for was, could they take pictures for because nothing else was being caught on there. And they'd had a really bad winter the winter before. And I said, yeah, fill your boots, lads. They've been really good to me. Why wouldn't you, you know?
You know, when you're... when you introduce that initial big hit of bait, does that mean you're then still topping up throughout the trip?
Never stop.
Really?
Yeah. I'm convinced they sit above it a lot of the time.
So it falling through them's no bad thing?
You know, like there's that bait there, and I think sometimes they don't swim and you swim. I think they're there. I think they use those layers a lot quicker than we think they use them. They get in the weed, you know, the tails are stuck out of weed. Then you just get something that makes them move.
So what would be a general rule for topping up? Like how many spoms are we talking? Is it dependent on what you think you've got in the swim?
It's depending on what I've caught. That's a big factor. If I get baits, you know, like it worked because, again, not trying to sound clever, somebody had been in there since Thursday many a times, and I bucketed the swim when I went in, and they hadn't had anything. I'd sometimes had 3 fish by 4 o'clock on that day. And I'd put 20 kilo of bait out, had the first fish, put another 20 kilo of bait.
I mean, that...
You never stop spomming.
No, I was going to say, that's a big undertaking.
You never stop spomming. No, Ben Swain used to drive past in his van and shout, "If Carlsberg did spomming..."
Yeah.
He wouldn't be on the advert, would he? But no, you never stop.
The elbows and that weren't...
It's work rate.
Yeah, right.
He was only 100 yards out, so it wasn't like he was hitting... but they wanted it. Would it happen again another winter? I think it would.
Why not?
Yeah.
Had you done it before?
On other lakes?
Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah. Empin winter with crumb boilie. Boilie can, you know, a boilie's not a boilie. A boilie can be mannerism of baits.
Yeah.
You could glug it right up. You could grind it to, you know, that Ridge Monkey turner is such a... You know, and the little Korda one, when you just... I never stop doing that. And then if it gets too big for that, the Ridge Monk, and you're grinding it up, and then you tip it in another bucket and do it again. And it's work right.
I'll tell you what, it's no wonder you're worried about being able to keep this up. Because that's physical fishing, isn't it?
It's hard work. It is hard work. But you get rewards. You know, it's the drive drives you.
Tobes, chuck a few of the Pettits fish up, mate. I'd like to see him myself anyway, but just as we're looking, but I mean that's definitely not the winter.
That's Baston.
Yeah. Go on, keep going. None of the summer ones, mate. These are, I think, imagine they're all at the top somewhere. Say stop if you see any, Andy.
That's Pettits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah, man.
Cracking fish, aren't they?
Yeah, the beautiful sort of yellows on them. That must have been late winter looking at those willows.
Yeah. That was coming. That was my last session, I think.
What we talking? Is that mid-30s?
Yeah, that was a big 30, that one.
Yeah. And the quality of the fish is...
They're all like that. They're all that size.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And they were up and down in weights. I caught one at 37, then caught it again at the end of winter at 34.5.
Strange.
And then the opposites as well. I had a common at 32, then had it at 36.
Did you put any of the big ones in, Tobes? Like the common you mentioned or something like that, Andy, would be good.
I think they're in there. That was 34. That's heavy, that one.
Is it? Yeah, big common.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that one. Yeah. Mega one. Yeah, another big chunky one.
Yeah, they had really wide bellies on them.
Do you sort of the photography side must absolutely get in the way if you're just doing nothing but spawn?
I hate it. The big question is, you're boring git. You never smile. It's a nuisance. The bite. That fish is fantastic. I don't need that photograph. Don't get me wrong. This isn't arrogance, cleverness, or anything. I've never seen that photograph when it was taken or anything. I've never looked at my phone. But the syndicate I'm on now says I have to take a picture both sides and register the weight. You know, in my mindset, it's an embryo water. I do it, but how many times would I want a picture of the same fish? When I've caught some fish 7 times in last. It's like, do I have to? It's a lot better for the fish to unhook it and tip. But I go with the rules of the lake, and that's it.
Let's have a look at those Baston fish, mate, as well, Toast. Because one thing we did talk about. So that's
the friendly. That's 56 for. That come on the Hunter's Moon with 630s up to 38.
Right. So and this wasn't the last one you caught, was it? Or was it which one came last, the sub or this one?
I've had the sub twice. I just tipped back the second time I had it.
So presumably you were still fishing for this one then at that point?
Yeah, that one was sending me nuts because that one was. I wanted that one.
Looks like a big male, is it? Is that right?
It's a male. It's so big. It's. I don't normally get wound up about fish, but that one wound me up. It was good because it was giving me a kick in, and I think you need it.
Did that mean that you caught more in that? The more aggressively you fish, the more you catch? Or?
The last 40 fish I caught, that's the only one that didn't repeat.
Right.
So it's...
You had to just wade to a degree through it.
Yeah, I knew it was that one. It's like trying to pull a mini car off the bottom. It's a heavy fish.
Right.
Because it was a long way out.
Yeah. It looks like it could row.
Yeah.
56.
And it was the last of the 7 fish.
Okay.
I was a bit tired because I was spommed. And I'd moved from Peg 1 where I'd had 3 the night before. And I decided I was going to move on. Rod always told me the 4 nights before the moon, make sure you're on them. And that was the last of the 4 nights before it went fall. It won't fall. And I can remember Carl ringing me up. Hey, head out, Dad. And I went, no. He went, you're useless. And then I sent him a picture with 5 retainers in the water.
Oh.
And he went, how big? 56, 38, 36, 30. And he went, look at that.
Yeah, right. Mega.
I mean, they don't come any better, do they?
That looks like high summer. Is that?
That was when I caught it in September.
Oh, September, okay.
But that is the one. That is like...
And how big was that one?
43 something.
Yeah.
And then I caught it in winter, 44 something. But I didn't need a picture in winter because I already caught it at night. Yeah. But that is an animal.
Right.
That pulled line like I was open clutched. It pulled me rod down to me reel so it couldn't go any further, and then started whizzing line off a Titan clutch. And I had I knew which fish it was. Yeah. And it was just zzz, 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 and it was like, righto, you just hope you've got a good hook hold.
Do you have to jump in the boat for that sort of thing, or?
No, I've landed it from the bank.
Yeah.
It was mental. And it was a brilliant session that I had 17 bites.
How?
They're just in front of me. They felt sorry for me.
No, they didn't.
I had a bad week the week before.
This is.
I got a punch from my barrow and it was fully loaded, mate. It don't get any worse.
Sure, it was a puncture on your barrow, or was it?
It was the worst thing ever, wasn't it? Halfway down, and your barrow just immediately tips over.
Right.
Yeah, I've got a story about a barrow.
Yeah, go on.
I got a very good friend made me new. I bought John Miller he knee jerks into things. He bought a barrow, then realised he didn't want it. It was brand new. I had it, and my friend Andy made it electric at Baston, and electric barrow isn't me, but I move a lot, so I thought I'm going full electric. He brought it. First time I thought, yeah, it's all right. It's not that much easier. Fish did 3 days, 3 nights. Barrowed back to the van, up the ramp, took me rods off so they're protected, got home, wheeled it out, realised I hadn't plugged it in.
At all?
So I've sold it.
Right.
I got that mad with myself. That is like...
You should have at least tried it. Come on, Andy.
I tried it up and down the cul-de-sac and it went where it wanted to. I thought, mate, I'll crash, because I do crash a lot with my barrow. Because you're looking at the lake and you hit everything, don't you? And I mean...
only because you don't take your eyes off the lake, right? That is the truth.
How many times does somebody say, "Well, when you move, one jumps"? I thought, it ain't going to happen again. But this electric barrow, well, you couldn't take your eyes off it. It went like mad. It was like, I break things, and I can't afford to break my Kaizens and what have you. So I've got me pick up and go barrow. I'm faster with that anyway, because they overtake the electric boys anyway.
I think that's probably a little bit more to do with you than it is to do with the barrow, though.
But that fish, mate, that is awesome.
That is a mega one.
That does deserve an after catch look. That does. That's the first time I've seen it since I caught it.
I think there's almost a smile there as well.
I had wind.
Yeah. Does that? I mean, it doesn't sound like the sort of lake that you're eager to draw the line under, but you have caught them all.
It'd be an hard give up. I think I'm going to fish it one night every fortnight or something, because the lovely people on there. And the fish are to die for.
I'll tell you what, you must be. You're definitely going soft then. If you're not going to just chop it off and go to the next place.
I've been banned from everywhere.
You've got no tickets. Anyone out there, contact Andy if you've got any tickets.
To be honest, I've had a lot of people. I mean, God bless him. There's a Nick who owns ADH Fisheries. Every time I get released from a syndicate, bless him, he has me on, and I fish until I find another one. And there is really nice fish.
Where's that? Sorry,
ADH Fisheries. It's in North Lincolnshire, not far off Mablethorpe.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Harvey, 5 lakes there, fish up to £40. He let me on it, and you need people like that. Like Dan. When Dan come in me swim the first time, I said, "Dan, can I ask you a question?" And he went, "Oh, go on." I said, "Am I going to get banned for something I'm not doing?" And he went, "No, mate, just fish." And it's like, you don't know what that means. Because honest to God, and I ain't done no wrong. If catching fish is a crime, then I'm a criminal. But I love other people to catch fish, and I hate the saying top rod. It's horrible. It's horrible.
Do you know what, though? I imagine it's one that's been thrown at you a few times.
Yeah, but it's like, everybody, there's anglers out there loads better than me, on top of the game and everything. I'm just a aging old git from a village that enjoys his fishing. Just forget me. It's like, what harm am I to these young lads in here that are prolific anglers? I'm no damage to them, am I?
Well, hopefully, you just like Rod did, you're passing on, in the form of this and on the bank, like the benefit of your experience. Is it important to you, do you think? Obviously Carl has had the benefit of your experience, but you're happy to do it for others as well.
Oh yeah, just happy fishing. Just enjoy your fishing, lads. Really, really. I do know some of them are under extreme pressure because they're so heavily sponsored. They're probably paying a mortgage and feeding the family. I don't know how you do it, lads, that off to you. That's a pressure in its own. And I can see why they might get bitter and twisted, and I take my hat off to them. To fish under that is like, wow, they've got to keep presenting pictures and phenomenal fish and go here and go. That's hard work.
Yeah.
That is really hard. I won't be able to do it. They're better anglers than I am.
What are your hopes then, looking forward for your fishing?
That we finish in the top 4. Oh, fishing.
Well, it looks like you might sneak in the top 4, though, doesn't it?
It's Chelsea.
The way Arsenal going, you might have our place.
Nah, it's Chelsea, mate. You can't hang your coat on Chelsea, can you? I love them to bits, but, you might invert the goalkeeper next game and we're in the shit again. It's...
So beyond top 4, what aspirations do you have for the year, fishing-wise?
Just to enjoy me. That's all I do, Rich. Honest. I'm not trying to play anything down. just to catch a few along the way and enjoy my fishing,
Mm-hmm.
and to enjoy the bank. That's such a big thing. Enjoyment of other people on the bank is such a big thing. Enjoy, to hear that lad that come off that other lake the other day. He said no. He enjoyed it. Yeah, and it's like, just remember that, lads, along the way. I've seen some changes for the good and the bad, but you just get along with it. Somebody changes a set of rules. It's not life changing. You just change your fishing to get around it. We're honoured to be out there and get invited and told we can fish syndicates, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant, and to be invited to do a fantastic day like this that I've enjoyed coming down to see what carp fishing is, and little old me from a village has been invited. It's like, did I ever think I'd see Chelsea win the Champions League? No. You get put in and just go along for the ride, because it's brilliant. It really is. If there's one thing I'd say, just enjoy it. Don't get too wound up in what somebody else is doing. Just enjoy it.
Well, we've enjoyed that, mate. So thank you so much for coming in, making the long journey down from Lincolnshire. And
thank you.
If you're out this week, mate, I'm sure you'll be catching. But best of luck.
Thank you very much, Rich. Thank you, Toby.
Cheers, mate.